Trophy Club Municipal Utility District Number 1 Board of Directors meeting is now in session. This is our regular meeting. The time is 6 p.m. All directors are present. The first item on the agenda is citizens' presentations. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the board on any matter whether or not it is posted on the agenda. The board is not permitted to take action on or discuss any presentations made to the board at this time concerning an item not on the agenda. The board will hear presentations on specific agenda items prior to the board addressing those items. You may speak up to 3 minutes or the time limit determined by the president or presiding officer. To speak during this item, you must complete the speaker's form that includes the topics of your statement. Topics of presentation should be limited to matters over which the board has authority. We have one person signed up. Mr. Rose, please state your name and address.
Bill Rose, 219 Inverness Drive. Resident of the Mud for a little over 21 years. My topic is winter average rates. This will be the 4th time I've come before you to address winter average rates in as many months, and the concept is yet to make it to an agenda. On July 15th, Director Thomas sent an email to the Trophy Club Tribune, which was then quoted. Jay Stowe did not propose winter averaging for our particular situation. They certainly could have done so, but against our future expense, they did not feel this was a valid approach. I have submitted 2 open record requests, and the results of those testify that the MUD has no record, either written or on video, of Jay Stowe representatives discussing or evaluating winter averaging. That would make Director Thomas's statement either a fabrication or an indication that the MUD directors have violated the Texas Open Meetings Act, in this case by transacting business outside of an open meeting. Director Thomas goes on to say in his email concerning winter average rates, this certainly could be done, and it would be more than likely produce monthly sewer revenues less than those that would be produced by the 18,000-gallon sewer cap we put in place on July 1st. But Matt, the sewer revenues generated via this method would leave us dramatically short of the total sewer revenues required. This statement is blatantly false. Director Thomas has either not done his homework or has intentionally set out to deceive the MUD's customers. Winter averaging is not complicated. The MUD simply determines the revenue it requires and divides that by the 1,000 gallons of sewage used by the customers determined under the winter averaging method. I believe that the MUD staff is very capable of performing the simple math involved. The MUD can generate as much revenue as they need under winter average rates. The MUD can modify the rate order at any time they like. To say that the revenues generated via this method would leave us dramatically short is simply ludicrous. Winter average rates are simply a method to distribute costs in a fair and equitable manner. This chart graphically displays the different costs of various MUD 1 user groups for processing 4,000 gallons of sewage. Previously, a Jay Stowe representative indicated potential legal issues if the cost of processing a wastewater stream were different and the components of that stream were similar. I've talked earlier about other cities that do this. Thanks. 1 minute. Some other cities that do winter averaging around the nation: Phoenix, Arizona; Portland, Oregon; Oklahoma City; Denver; Lake Havasu, Arizona; St. Helens, Oregon; Gladstone, Missouri. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll see you next month.
Okay. You got about through, didn't you?
I have 2 more pages of cities.
Next time. Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Laurie.
We will now move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed as consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Directors and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Item 1, consider and take appropriate action to approve the consent agenda. A, approve interlocal agreement with Denton County for tax collection. B, July 15, 2014 regular meeting minutes. July 15, 2014 joint meeting minutes. Item D, July check register. Item E, approve First Amendment to amended and restated contract for wholesale water supply and wastewater treatment services and water and wastewater operational services between the district and the town of Trophy Club. Discussion.
Well, I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I just have a question on E.
Okay.
What extent, are we talking about the A, section A, or what are we, the First Amendment?
This is the amendment that was approved at the joint that took out the definition of utility fee.
7.04.
7.04A, yes.
Right.
That's what I thought, I just wanted to make sure. Could we, I guess we would have to remove it to clarify at that point, is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
On E, it's saying to approve the amendment, amended. So if I want to be specific as far as 704A, we'd have to remove it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
If you would
I'll
retract it to A to D and then pull E off.
I'll amend my motion to, from the consent agenda for items A through D.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Neal, and we have a second by Director Carr. And do we have a motion to approve the other items on the agenda?
That's the motion. We would approve
Yeah,
for.
the motion
Oh,
is
okay,
A
I'm
through
sorry.
A to D.
I got you.
And Kevin seconded, so,
We have a motion before the board. All those in favor?
aye.
It is unanimous.
Okay, I'd like to make.
Item E.
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda or item E to also state that it's section 7.04A is being referred to.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous. We now move on to the regular session. Item 2, consider and take appropriate action to approve order number 2014-0819, amending the district's investment policy. Jennifer, is that you?
Every year, the board is required by the Public Funds Investment Act to review your investment policy, and that's why this is on the agenda this month. There really weren't any changes to the policy this year, other than there were some of the banks that did not provide their certificates that they received a copy of our policy, and so they were deleted from our list of approved investment firms. But all of the banks that are still listed on Exhibit C are banks that we do have investments with, and they did return the forms.
Any discussion? Do we have a motion?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve order number 2014-0819 for the investment policy.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Director Thomas, and we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If there's not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Item 3, consider and take appropriate action to approve order number 2014-0819A, Board of Director Code of Ethics. We have one citizen wishing to speak. Please step forward, state your name and address.
Thank you. Bill Rose, 219 Inverness. I think in your code of conduct, as I was looking at, I see a problem. If you would turn to your packet page 91. Okay, if I've got you there.
Okay, Article 5? At the
I
top.
didn't, it's on down a little ways. I think it says, yeah, it's Article 5, correct. It says directors will not. One of those bullets down there says, will not make individual statements to the media concerning district issues without prior authorization of the board. And this one comes to light, not to pick on Director Thomas, but as a result of his recent email. I think there's a problem with this one, and the problem is it requires authorization of the board. The problem with authorization of the board is, from my perspective in open meetings, you would have to agenda that and have a discussion in open meetings on whatever topic it was that the director wanted to look at. Because if you don't do that and he goes to the board and says, I'd like to do this, you're now conducting business, mud business, outside of an open meetings. So what I would encourage you to do is either change that to say authorization of the board president or find another solution to get around it so that you don't have this problem facing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Any discussion?
Yeah, I happen to agree with what Bill just said. You know, before I said anything to Matt, Jim, I came to you and to Jennifer both and cleared what I was going to tell Matt. And according to this, I should have gone to the entire board and not just to the president and to the general manager. But I mean, I didn't talk to Matt without coming to both of y'all ahead of time and saying, this is what I'm going to say. Is it okay?
Okay. Any other discussion? Do we, any other items in the Code of Ethics that anybody has a question about? If not, we'll ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the Code of Ethics. Sorry, yes, thank you.
I want to,
At least it's not showing me the mute button this time. So, let me go out to the agenda item. Okay, order, approve order number 2014-0819A, ethics policy, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think Bill's right. I'd like to see this one particular item amended to say that with prior authorization of the president of the board.
But isn't the, it in there that individual, a board member, won't present a public policy, present to the public a position of the MUD board that the MUD hasn't taken already? I mean, the idea is we talk in a common voice. We meet, and we discuss, and when we have come to a common decision, then if we have to present something to the media, it's already been, everybody's on the same page.
Well, Neil, yes and no. I mean, I think Bill's right in what he's saying. Matt Brasher contacted me and asked about this particular situation that Bill's referring to. I prepared something and sent it to Jim Moss and to Jennifer for their approval before sending it to Matt. And both of them came back and said what I had was fine. And so I went ahead and did that. Well, but read this statement. Make individual statements to the media concerning, it says directors will not. You know, I didn't know about this. I thought I'd done it correctly. Directors will not make individual statements to the media concerning district issues without prior authorization of the board. Mm-hmm. Now, I think Bill's absolutely correct in what he's saying. That causes you to have to wait 30 days if something crops up you want to respond to. I think that sentence needs to be modified. And however you choose to modify it, I think maybe the president of the board can give permission to do that. Or I think
Jim, when that occurred, if I recall correctly, the email that you sent to us, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you stated in there that you were going to give your opinion and your position, right, your individual. And you and I discussed this in I think that's a later part in here that it states that when you're presenting your individual opinion or position, you must explicitly state that you are not representing the district. And if I recall correctly, that's what you stated to Matt,
I
that
did
you
that,
were
and I said-
representing
I said
your
it was
own
my
opinion
individual
of this.
opinion.
Yeah, you did.
But
And
still,
so-
again, I this thing is so restrictive.
Sure.
I really think Bill's on a right idea with this thing. I think that sentence ought to be modified. Now, granted, look, don't misunderstand me now. I don't think anybody jumps up and just says anything they want to say at any time they want to say it. There needs to be a process in place. Now, I'm not sure who the approval is, but I think the president of the board can approve something.
I know what you're saying, but I kind of disagree because if the president says it's okay, then now you got two people speaking for the rest of the board. And I think the whole purpose of us having a policy saying, okay, the general manager or the president would be the spokespeople for this board. If they wanted to say that message, then I didn't have any problem. But you stating that you were doing it individually kind of excluded you from speaking as
Okay.
a board person.
All right.
And I just don't want, like Jim comes to Jim Moss and says, I'm going to say something, and Jim Moss says, yeah, okay, that's fine. Well, now you got two people speaking on behalf of the board, and there's 5 people here. So that's just my input.
Did we not have a discussions, Jennifer, sometime back? And did we not agree as a board that the general manager would be the contact person for all media outlet?
Yes, and I think the
If I remember
policy
wrong.
says that.
So,
I don't think you can restrict an individual's free speech if they want to speak on behalf of themselves. But you're correct in that if it is a position of the district, it's to be referred to me. Yes, that is true.
And I think that's a policy we adopted.
Yes, that's in the ethics
It
code.
basically says make individual statements to the media concerning districts and stuff like that.
Okay. What, any further discussion?
Well, I will tell you, having been involved with this, I would say that in the future, when situations like that occur, we should just refer them to Jennifer. Because, I couldn't have been more clear with Matt that it was my personal opinion. But the problem is when you publish something in the paper and you publish a quote, you don't know what was said before that quote.
Right.
All you got is the quote. All right, and the quote is from a MUD director. Well, I told Matt in writing, and I told him personally that I'm expressing my opinion, but it didn't get put in there that this was my opinion. It got put in there as if I was a director of the board. So I just think that in the future, when situations like that occur, it's a good idea. Let's just send them to Jennifer and let her handle them.
Okay, I don't think anybody
Agree.
disagrees with that.
Okay, so I'll call for a vote.
Okay, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Item 4, consider and take appropriate action to approve order number 2014-0819B, Board of Director Agenda Policy. Director Thomas?
Jim and Neil have been on MUD boards before and certainly understand how agenda items occurred when they were on the respective boards. I've done this for a long time and served on many, many different boards, and it can kind of change over time. We even had a situation years ago where it got to be a problem because one individual had too much say-so over agenda items and you couldn't get anything on the agenda. So I want to bring it up for discussion that I believe that any board member that wants an item placed on an agenda, unless the general manager can convince that board member that that's not a good idea, that item should get on the agenda. I don't think it should have to go through an approval process other than a discussion between Jennifer and the board member.
Any other
I-
comments?
Did we already make a motion?
No, we haven't.
There's no motion, we're just
No motion yet.
discussing. Out of order like usual.
But
Well, I mean-
attachment there, Article 2 says, if a director wants to place an item on the agenda, the item must be submitted to the board president and general manager not less 7 business days prior to the agenda. Doesn't that spell out what the rule is?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of back up and say something. Director Thomas asked that this item be on the agenda. And this is, you see that it's marked draft all over it. because I just wanted to give y'all a starting point to discuss how you would like an agenda policy to be set. So don't take this as some policy that's already that we have and that we're amending. This is just something for you to create tonight or over time, however you want to do it. But I just tried to kind of take ideas and put it to paper. So I want to make that clear that this isn't a policy at all right now. This is just a draft of something that I put together when Mr. Thomas asked to have an agenda policy for you all to look at. So please scrap the whole thing if that's what you want to do. This is for y'all to draft and develop. And I guess if there's something you're going to do that's not legal, Pam will jump in. But other than that, I think y'all can kind of formulate it the way you want it.
Okay. Director Carr?
My thought on this is similar to what I believe the council does, is that if another director wants something on the agenda, they could get the support of a fellow director, and then you're assured you're going to get a motion and a second to discuss it, rather than just put it on there. And I don't think anyone on this board would have any problem with, as long as it's not too out of the ordinary, putting something on the agenda to discuss. So in summary, I'd just like, maybe have with board president or general manager approval, and if they turn it down, then you could go to another fellow board member and have two people bring it, and it would be put on the agenda.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Can you do that outside of open meeting?
As long as you don't get a third person involved.
Just asking the question.
Because basically, that's going to be a second anyways. If you make a motion for something and you're going to get a second, that opens it up for discussion. So you already have two people that want to talk about it. So that, I think what the town does, and that is, if for some reason the mayor didn't want to put something on the agenda, and do you have a problem with the 7 business days? I mean,
no.
we don't want to put something on at the last minute when nobody has a chance to prepare for something.
No, Neil, where I was coming from was we've done this over the years so many different ways. It kind of depends on what board was in place at the time and who was president at the time. I just thought with you and Jim now recently joining this board, that this board ought to have a standard approach that it agrees to and that we follow for agenda items.
I'm happy the way Jennifer wrote it on Article 2, Item 1.
Okay.
If a director wants to put something on there and he can't get a second, then he just doesn't get a second, and it doesn't get acted on.
Jim, no one's made a motion yet, but I mean,
No, I don't
Not
have
yet.
one. I'm waiting for a motion.
but I'd like to see something added to that regarding the regular placing things on agenda, just to say that if 2 directors, requested something be put on the agenda, namely, if somehow the general manager and the MUD president said, no, we're not going to do that, there is an alternative, just like the council has, of the town. And what I like to see, if Jim Thomas wouldn't mind, is that maybe we'll just, in fact, I'll do it. I'll look at what the town has regarding that and come up with some draft language, and we can revisit this again next meeting, Jim? And,
Neil, that's fine. All I was after
and
was
can-
getting something. Matter of fact, the draft was good. I was after just getting something that all of us could agree to. So that
I like the
going
body.
forward,
the
we're in
rest-
agreement.
The rest of this really covers all the salient points, I think, as far as when we have a meeting, what's emergency meetings, and everything else. So I think it's good overall. But what I'll do is, the next couple weeks, I'll send you some proposed language and get your insight on that, because this is basically your initiative, and then if that's fine, we'll bring it back at the next meeting in September.
Neil, one thing you might want to think about when you're doing that is if you submit an item to the president and general manager 7 days in advance, and for whatever reason those individuals want to say no, then the way this is currently written, you can't get a second and get it on that agenda. You got to wait another 30 days. So you need to be thinking about that when you write this.
All right, I'll think of that. You know, you could, it's like deferring the application till it's too late to reapply, so
Right.
I don't see the way it's worded. I don't see the ability of the MUD director or the president of the MUD to deny the motion.
There is, and the way this is written, there is no denial.
Yeah.
Any director could put, as long as it's filed 7 days before, it shall be put on the agenda.
So I really don't have strong feeling whether you get a second director to agree with you or whether you don't. It's not a big item to me. I do think that directors should be able to put anything on there that is proper, and whether the rest of us agree or not, he should have the right to put it on there.
Well,
And I think that's what the policy says, is that any director can place an item on the agenda as long as it's submitted 7 days prior to the posting. There is a difference in emergency meetings. That can't, just any director can't call an emergency meeting, of course. Special meetings, because they're for specific purposes, those agendas will be drafted by the general manager and the board president. If that's an area that you want to add in, that for a special meeting that 2 people can request something be placed on there, that would be an area you could. Joint meetings, that's very difficult to have requests from directors because those agendas are coordinated with another entity. And once you kind of get that coordination done, that's kind of where the agenda has to stop. But maybe what I've been trying to do is keep a list of things as we kind of go along. There's been several good ideas for items to place on joint agendas. So maybe in meetings, you can say, I think this is a good item for a joint agenda, and then we can get those put on there later. But for regular board meetings, the way this is written, any director can place any item they want to on the agenda, just as long as it's within that time frame.
My concern is, with the staff time, if a director puts something on there that requires a lot of staff time to research and put together, information, and then no one else really has any interest in it, And obviously you can't poll the board, and after I said what I said earlier, I kind of questioned whether you could even get around that, and, I could ask you about, if you ask for a second person to ask, you already brought the topic up to the president, and now you're going to go to a second person. That would be 3.
It's not uncommon for governmental bodies to have the procedure that Neil is suggesting. Many of them do. It's not uncommon. My concern is that I want your ethics policy and what you create separately, I want them to match. So I'm sitting here actually looking back and forth because many of the provisions are repeated. So I don't want you to have 2 conflicting provisions. If you wanted to go the route of having 2 people, that has really been tested to be okay. But the way that it's drafted is even more opened up for people to have a voice than that. So if, it's not necessary unless you just want to lock that in and make sure that if 2 people bring it, you want to make sure that it's going to be on the agenda.
Comments?
As I say, I don't care whether it takes 2 or 1. I do take interest in Kevin's suggestion the staff not be overloaded to do research on something that may never get a second. So I would prefer to see it say that staff doesn't do any work until there's a second and it gets passed. You can put your motion, if you want an agenda item, put it in there. I don't think the staff ought to do any research until they get a second and the board approves it, and then they can do their research.
Could the general manager send something out to the board and say, Director Thomas suggested that this item be on the agenda? Does anyone support it, or was that kind of poll taking?
Yeah, that would.
That's crossing the line.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. That would be a bit too far.
Okay.
General managers sometimes make reports, one-way communication information, but I'm not in favor of that.
Director Hayes, are you suggesting that we take the wording that's here? Or are you suggesting also that there be
I don't know
maybe a
if
modification?
Neil and Kevin think the second opinion is a good way to go. I don't care. It's okay with me.
What I suggest is we just table this for now and come back.
I
Ji-
do
Jim,
not want to
I know Jim Thomas has a conflict, I think, at our next meeting. If that's still the same, then there's no sense, we can just bring it back in October versus the September meeting's on the 16th. If that's acceptable to you, because you should be here, it's your,
Yeah, I'll miss the next meeting. And please understand something. All I wanted us to do is be in agreement on how we do this, because it differs over time. And so with two new players, I figured the five of us can sit down and say, this is how we want to do it, and let's put it down. I think Jennifer's done a great job of setting it up as a draft.
well, let me come up with some draft language, and Pam's brought up a good thing. Now I'm going to go back and also reread the ethics policy, make sure we're not tripping over a wire
Right.
and, that we didn't think about, and see if I can come up with something. And then bring this back in October, and
Right.
and that way you'll have plenty of time to look at it, and we'll just take it up.
I have
from
no
there.
objection to making the change where it takes two people. We have, in the last 4 years or so, we have allowed, because directors wanted it that way, one director to put an item on the agenda. It's worked pretty good, so I have no objection either way. So unless somebody has a motion, we will table this item for a future agenda.
Jim, in all practical purposes, we kind of been doing that. Anything I ask for, I always copy you and Jennifer as well, and you always put either yes or no, and
Yes, right, yeah, and we've never had any problem up to this point. However,
He's never approved any of mine.
I will
Director
it's
send,
because it's too much staff work.
Director Carr is an exception. He wants accounting to do a book full of work to get it on the agenda item, so, okay.
I will send this out to all of y'all in Word, including you, Pam. And that way, it'll make it easier if you want to kind of work through it and you think of some edits or changes you want, it'll make it a little easier for you. So I'll send that out to y'all in Word.
And before we move off of it, I would just think it would be helpful for the board to know if Jennifer has a preference of how she would like it to go. Do you?
Who cares?
Oh, she doesn't
Yeah.
get a vote.
I am fine with individual directors. I like the idea of if someone wants something placed on the agenda, that they're allowed to place it there. I just think that there's got to be time in order to get things posted, that's got to be, turned in time. And again, it just needs to be on there for consideration by the board, and then from there you kind of decide how to move forward. Can't be big reports put together and that sort of thing until you know that that's something the whole board's interested in.
And Jennifer, let's give an example to everybody of something right down the line of what Kevin was talking about a minute ago. I'm very interested personally in, are we charging the right amount for our fluid? We haven't looked at that rate charge for a long time. And so I've asked Jennifer to consider that for this council meeting. And Kevin, she told me that's going to take some staff work. And I said, well, fine, let's just wait until you can get around to getting the work done, and then we'll talk about it. So, there are times when you have to back off because there's staff work involved.
Yeah.
And I do have that. Some of that.
Okay,
too.
there's no further discussion. Let's move on to item 5. Consider and take appropriate action to appoint 2 directors to work with the Town Trophy Club, Town Council on evaluation of current agreement for water and wastewater services and the possible development of changes to the current agreement. This is my item, and we've discussed this. It was discussed at our joint meeting. It was agreed by the council that we would appoint 2 committee members. The council would appoint 2 committee members, and then this committee would work towards determining whether or not any changes should or should not be made. I've had 2 volunteers, Kevin Carr and Jim Hayes have both volunteered to be on this committee, and if there's no objections, I'd like to have somebody make a motion to appoint them.
I'll make the motion that Director Jim Hayes and Director Kevin Carr serve on this committee.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'd second.
We have a second. If there's no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. That is a major job, by the way, and but a very essential one.
And Nick and Greg are on for the council, right?
Oh, are they? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mayor Sanders and Mayor Pro Tem Lamont are on. Do you want to rethink that, Jim?
You were sure to keep that quiet till afterwards.
Yeah, hey, it's all done now and it's been settled. Okay.
Speaking of the devil.
Item 6, consider and take appropriate action to appoint 2 directors to serve on the committee with district staff to review employee health benefit options fiscal year 2015.
We are working on getting some quotes together. We've pretty much got them together, and now we're putting it in a format. And it gets really, really complicated. I thought it would be a good idea if a couple of directors came in and we worked through it together and came up with what we wanted to bring forward for the board as a whole to consider. So this was kind of my idea. We need to work on this pretty quickly to try to bring this back for the September meeting. So it would have to be someone that's willing to kind of jump right in, and that's the only qualification I have for this position. And the pay isn't very well.
Do we have any volunteers? Wonderful. That's great.
I normally would, but I'm
Hey,
just gonna be
I
out of
would
town. so-
volunteer
Well,
somebody
you can do
else.
it by phone. We can always email you.
No, I would suggest that,
Skype now, yes, we'll
since
do it by
Neil's
Skype.
not gonna be in town for a couple of months, or however long, I would suggest that Jim Thomas and Jim Moss take on this assignment, since Kevin and I have the other assignment. Let's
Okay.
spread the work around.
I can't find it.
I second that.
Jim, my problem is I'm leaving shortly and we'll be out of country,
On a trip.
When are you leaving?
Is there a
September
chan-
5th.
Any chance you could cancel
How
that?
about a one-man committee till he gets back?
You still have a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
When did you want to get started on that?
Yeah, we can get started pretty quick. I mean, where are we at, Terry? We probably need a couple more days to get it in a good format, so we could start early next week, right? And I think it's only going to take one meeting. We won't keep you very long.
If you set it up on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have Tuesday and Thursday conflicts, but if you set it up on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I can help.
Okay, we'll do it either next
But I've only
Monday,
got-
Wednesday, or
but-
Friday.
But outside of next week, that's almost all I have. And don't do it for Monday. I'm out of town. I won't be back until Monday evening.
So now you're down to Tuesday, Wednesday.
So Wednesday
no,
or
Wednesday,
Friday.
Friday. I'm available Wednesday, Friday of next week.
All right, so Wednesday or Friday of next week. We will work on that.
6:20.
Okay,
In fact,
Pam, do we
hang
need to
on-
vote
Hang
on
on
this?
one second, Jennifer. I think I'm available.
Committee members.
Well, it's been your practice so far tonight to do that, so I think you should continue the same.
I make a motion that we appoint Jim Moss and Jim Thomas to work with the MUD manager to take appropriate action on the employee health benefit options for FY 2015.
If it-
I'm free next Friday.
Next
We
Friday.
have a motion and
Wait, there's a motion and you said it.
I second it.
Okay. If you would, if there's a problem, I'll be back Wednesday and I can fill in.
So you're the alternate?
Yeah, can I-
alternate, okay,
I
good.
mean, I'm wide open next Friday, Kevin, but I'm just booked the rest of the Monday through Thursday.
Jim Hayes, is that okay? Alternate Kevin Carr and Neil Toomey?
Yes. Perfect. Yes.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor,
Aye.
it is unanimous. Item 7, consider and take appropriate action regarding draft fiscal year 2015 budget. A, budget inclusion of one additional firefighter, 50% shared with the town of Trophy Club. B, information technology services. C, other budget items. Jennifer, can you take the lead on this?
Sure, I have a handout I want to give y'all about the item A, budget inclusion of an additional firefighter. I will take on the task of passing out the paperwork, and I will let Danny take on the task of convincing you all.
Thank you.
I'll jump in and help him if I need to.
Thank you.
I will tell you, Danny, that Terry was kind enough to take the base pay for your proposed new employee and all of the benefits that go with it, and it's 37,615. That's what you came up with.
I've got 8 of them if you need one. I copied them too, so.
So Danny, are you gonna kind of explain to him what these sheets are that I handed out? Did you see this one, this one and the graph?
Yeah, the graph, I'm trying to get the graph. Okay, first and foremost, I met with Mr. Toomey and Mr. Hayes today for about an hour and a half talking about this particular thing, and they were interested in the benefits of this 5th firefighter. And this spreadsheet in front of you shows we had one of my firefighters go out for 6 months with a back injury, and the backfield for that position in part-time alone saved $24,960. If we'd have backfilled with overtime, it'd have been $54,000, but we didn't have to backfill because we were at 5-person on that shift. And on vacation coverage on a 4th shift, on a 4-man shift, if anybody takes breaks away for vacation time, which it shows each one of them's allotted time in shift, 10 shifts for the lieutenant and the engineer, and 7.5 for the firefighters, which equates to 240 hours each on the lieutenant and the engineer, and 180 hours on the 2 firefighters. At the part-time rate, that's $31.20 on the lieutenant and the engineer, and $23.40 on the 2 firefighters, which is a savings of $10,920 on just part-time. If in a bad world where we couldn't get part-time and it went to overtime, you can see the number out in the red on the far side. And this goes down to vacation, sick time, and personal time that they all accrue. If we had to cover the 4th position with staff hours or part-time staff hours. So I think it's very beneficial for this 5th person to come on board for the coverage of the sick, the vacation, the personal leave. Also, when these guys get offered up training, engineer training or life safety training or whatever, they can break away from the department, go to their training. We don't have to backfill their position. But first and foremost is the safety and the safety of those trucks going out the doors. That was my platform, making this 5th position to both sides of the equation. I want it known that if we're going to have the station on a call, I need to have three on the engine and 2 on the medic at any given time to protect this community. Sunday was a great example. We had, we could have put 3 on the engine and 2 on the quint going out the door, and that made all the difference in the world in stopping that fire. 5 more minutes of that fire with a 4-man crew would have been devastating. We'd have lost that house in 5 minutes with 4 people. I promise you, I got pictures to show you. I don't have with me tonight, but I do have pictures we took that shows that the attic was primed and ready to flash if we hadn't had the adequate people to get in the house and get to the fire in that amount of time. And that's all the difference it takes between a 4-man and a 5-man shift.
Who's taking the pictures?
My photographer. I have a volunteer photographer that takes the pictures.
And he was there?
Yes. Yes.
So if you had a volunteer firefighter like the volunteer photographer, he could have helped out.
You're right. You're right, Kevin. I had 2 volunteers. I had 2 of my volunteers. This was the perfect storm. This Sunday morning fire was the perfect storm because it came in at 6:25. I had an ongoing shift and an off-going shift. I had 9 guys going to that fire. In 20 minutes' time, I had a structure fire, a medical call, and another structure fire, all in 20 minutes' time. So going out of the station on that engine was 4 men on the engine and 2 men on that quint.
But
So I had 6 men going out the door.
Within that 20 minutes, you had 35-plus people, though.
No.
How many
no.
people?
I had 35 people on scene, but it took 18 minutes to get the first arriving unit from Roanoke to get there. So, I have the resources, guys, and they are great help. I had 35 people on both of these fires and the medical call, plus I had an engine from Keller sitting in that station to cover the community for other calls. So resource management, that's my job. I do my job, I think, very well. I'm just saying, for our first initial alarm, for anything in this community we do, I'm begging for that fifth person.
Well,
And my volunteers is great. Like I said, this was the perfect storm because I had two of the three of my volunteers there. One spent the night in the station Sunday night, and the other one came to the fire. So, it
well,
was-
how come we don't recruit more volunteers?
I've tried to recruit more volunteers. I can't get them a commitment on their time.
The
It's
more-
great to sign the piece of paper and come to the station, but when they can't make the calls and my two volunteers and their time, I require for my application for a volunteer is 36 hours a month. Pete and Steve both have committed less than 14 hours to that time because they can't because of the work schedule and the family schedule.
What's the commitment of Frisco and
I don't
other
care.
departments? What?
I don't care. I'm working with Trophy Club. I don't know how they get their volunteers. They have volunteers that work in their city and can respond in their cities. My residents don't work in the city. They work out of the city.
How'd you start off in Trophy Club?
How did I start off in Trophy Club?
Yeah.
As a volunteer.
How'd Donnie start off?
As a volunteer in
Okay.
the South.
Okay.
Okay, questions?
Before we start off, look, I think you and the firefighters should be commended because your actions on Sunday, where you covered everything, showed planning, training, and commitment. You got the job done, and you averted a major complication there. So, I mean, from what I understand, you got from when the time the alarm was sounded, you were there within 5 minutes. And that mutual aid was also came into swing. As you told me today, Keller was covering our station because basically everybody else was out on call. I want to jump. So first of all, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because you are doing your job. Okay. But I want to ask something about this overtime graph that you. In when we're looking at this in 2012, is it, when I look at that bar chart, is that the end of 2012 fiscal year? Is that the end of 2013 fiscal year?
You're gonna have to help me on this.
Yes, it was fiscal years 11, 12, and 13, complete fiscal years.
All right, and so what's the
And that's when I
one
started
that's
the-
out
that's when I
there
started the
hanging in
five-man
thin air that doesn't seem to have any support?
That's just showing that the little red box means it's the OT hours. That's just like a
Okay,
legend,
that's
I
why.
guess.
Well, you can see, in what we discussed today, by adding the first fifth person in 2012 budget, how you brought down the overtime cost. Then you see another projection where, because now you have two of your shifts that have 5 people, how you brought it down again. Not as much as the first time, but you did bring it down, okay? What would be your projection for unscheduled overtime, which I know you can't do because some people have accidents at home and are not able to report to work because of broken bones. But, one of the things we talked about is you got to show the benefit of adding the extra person and the savings that you might incur by reducing the overtime.
Right.
What is it?
And that's where I'm showing it in the spreadsheet as far as the hours. If I were to backfill the fourth position with a part-time or overtime, that's where the savings is coming in. If I didn't have that fifth person, this is the cost it would cost us, this town in my budget.
But at the same time, since we have 2 shifts with 5 people, don't you have some flexibility to move that first
Right
person?
now, I have a lieutenant that called in Saturday with a broken wrist, so now I have 2 shifts with 4 and 1 with 5.
All right.
And then I have training and, so,
I mean, but you can't forecast injuries like
no,
this.
you cannot forecast injuries.
In a perfect world where certain people aren't accident prone and other person, I don't want to go into medical stuff, but I mean, bottom line, what would you be, are you saying without any injuries, this is your projection?
Right.
Now, getting back to Kevin, and again, when I first came out here a long time ago, we did have a volunteer fire department, and I do remember the guys rushing down if there was a call. Is there any way you can address maybe augmenting the number of volunteer firemen to set up some type of program, especially on that third shift where we have additional coverage.
And I've put the word out there, and I have applications out there for volunteers. I'm just not getting the people that want to commit the time and the training to put them on the hose line, put their life on the line as far as firefighters. You just can't take somebody off the street and put them on,
Yeah, but,
air
you know,
pack on them and shove them in
Well,
the
we
hose.
don't, you know, 36 hours is a pretty big commitment per month. But if you got a number of people to be committing even 8 or 10 hours, and then you know, match it up with the third shift, right, you know, in a perfect world, no more injuries, then you could be doing something. And also, you know, the other thing Kevin asked last meeting was the other towns our size, what's the size of their fire departments? Did you get any information on that?
We kind of looked at our demographics as far as the cities around us and who we compete with as far as our staffing and our demographics.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about Westlake, I'm not talking about Roanoke or Southlake, I'm talking similar size towns.
The large, well, Argyle and Justin are a good example. They have been volunteer for longer than we have, many, many years longer than we have. They are all going to paid staff for the simple fact they can't regulate the availability of their volunteers.
But as you pointed out to me today, Roanoke has gone recently to 6. Westlake, I think, is at 4. Okay.
They're at 3 with the power shifts. what they
Okay.
are.
But my question is, other towns, our size, okay? And again, nothing's perfect. Do you have some data showing what the size of their fire crews are? What is being staffed? I mean, the justification is, you know, we know that in build-out, we will need this extra person, okay? We're not there yet. And this year, as I hammered today with you, we're about to spend $208,000 a year, or commit for that for the next 7 years for a new engine, that we do need the equipment. There's no question on that. But the bottom line is, okay, there's a difference of over a penny on our tax rate just by funding the new fire equipment. You know, right now, the new budget has it, that sheet I gave you today, we didn't reflect the new budget. It's off by 1/10 of 1 penny, so 7.8 for the fire, but, you know, we're still 1.3 cents higher. If we didn't have to go for the quint, we would have a, you know, dramatic thing. And it's the thing of, and with our budget constraints because of the debt coming online this year for the wastewater treatment plant, we only have so many dollars to spend. And you know, I understand what you're saying, and I remember you arguing before when we wanted to go to 2 and 2. And but as the town has grown, we've been adding this. You also mentioned at the budget meeting on August 6th that there was an agreement, and again, I went back, I looked at all the minutes and all the special meetings in the MUD in 2012, and I never found a reference to that
And
either.
Neil, I might have made that comment about an agreement that was never, and I apologize to this board and everybody that's listening to this tape right now. It was not an agreement. It was a program that I put forth to the MUD, to Jennifer and Mike as far as getting this 5th person on staff, starting 2 years ago with 1 on shift a year for 3 years to get this 5th person down. So it was a program, not an agreement. Nobody agreed. I
Well,
fought every year.
You did get them to agree, because
I did,
we-
but
they-
I fought all 3
each year,
years for this.
2012 and 2013, they've added 1 more person, EMS/firefighter, so that's been added. And, but as my question was to you today, was, okay, we need to spend about not counting the gasoline money we're gonna use towards this, we're gonna spend over $200,000 on financing per year for the next 7 years, the new Quint, versus, do you, you know, right there, what's your priority? If you only could spend money on one, which one would be? And your answer to me is both. Well,
Well, if the board was gonna put that number to me, I would say staff over the equipment right now.
so you don't want the Quint?
I do want the Quint. I think the Quint's a necessity, but I think staff to man that piece of apparatus is more important for this community.
But you know, look, the fire incident on Sunday. You know where, the way that hill is and everything out there, you really even couldn't use, if you had to use the ladder in that truck, you couldn't.
We could have too. And we were parked right in front of the house, with the ladder extended to the balcony as high as we'd go. We needed to get to the chimney where the lightning struck. We couldn't reach it with 75 foot.
And, I mean-
Even with the angle, we were parked on the top side of the angle.
I mean,
so-
the balance, Danny, is with the mutual aid, you had the people there to handle the job, but you didn't have a quint that could handle the job.
Right.
So to me, I mean, it's kind of like the balance is, I need the quint now, and maybe the firefighter in 2016. Or maybe we come back, as we talked about, based on what happens with the purchase on the quit, maybe come back and do a budget
Neil,
amendment.
Mr.
then-
King, you're asking me as far as operation in the chief of what my direction would be as far as the staffing over the equipment goes, and the staff would be over the piece of equipment. We can get, we can do with what we have, we can jack ladders or whatever, but that's,
Then we're,
we have to have
then we're
the-
back, then we're back down to, as Director Kevin, our Director Carr has been talking about. Okay. Any of those above. The Irishman sitting next to me. We'd like you to address doing more on the volunteer side to try and fill this position, or cover that third shift for ongoing base. Now, look, you've have a couple of injuries right now, and I know that. But you also mentioned you weren't bringing this person on until the beginning of 2000.
But it takes about 3 months to get a firefighter hired.
Okay. And you mentioned to me that he'd be on staff for like half a year. So, it isn't like I need this guy October 1st because you couldn't do it anyways, but you're talking about sometime in the first quarter of 2015. So there's already a gap, between now and whenever you'd get this guy on board, or person on board, I should say. I mean, what I would be looking at is, okay, if you can wait to 2015, and we go out and buy the new equipment, and you augment your staff aggressively by going out and getting some more volunteers, then come back and talk to us. As I said to you today, I'm open to talking about this again, but I also want to know how much, when we put out our request for a proposal on the quint, how much is that going to cost, and see if there's anything else we can play with. That's-
Director Thomas, did you have a question?
Yes. Danny, Neil is very correct in that we have a lot of various expenses to be planning for. And I don't believe personally that this should be an either or as far as a person and a fire truck goes. I think we got to look at the needs of the fire department, and then do we have the funds to accomplish those needs. Now, Danny, I think you've kind of missed an opportunity here, and if this will be helpful to you. You've shown that in 2011 to 2012, you dropped the overtime from about 1,100 hours down to, looks like about 770 hours, if I could draw. That was with the addition of a person. Then from 2012 to 2013, when you added that second person, you dropped it from 770 down to 600. Now, you're only 6 weeks away from finishing this year, so you ought to have a pretty good line of sight now on what your overtime's going to be. I don't know what it is, but I see this little bar over here indicating that it might be, 580 hours, if this last little bar is correct. What I would suggest is that, based on your own experience, if you can show that this other person is in fact going to take the 2014 number, whatever it is, and you can certainly, with only 6 weeks to go, probably fairly accurately forecast that number. If you can kind of take a crack at what you can reduce it to, again, by the addition of that fifth person that you need, then it gives us a real clear perspective. It's kind of hard, Danny, to follow all of the red print over here, but in your bar chart, that's real easy to follow. And so if you show us what your 2014 year-end number is going to be, your best shot at it, and then by adding another person, what you think you can drop this overtime to again, well, then we can very easily do the math on overtime hours and see how much of the person's salary we can cover. And maybe this thing turns out to be not as big a bite as we think it is. You know, but we just don't have the, you know, the data. And we do have to think in terms of, man, new fire truck, this water tank, third water tanks can come at us at pretty fast. This new 48-inch line is $600-something is coming at us immediately. Refurbishing the elevated tank can be coming at us. That could be thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there's a lot of, looking out 3 and 4 years, huge expenses. That fire truck is going to be what, about $1.5 million, roughly?
A little over $1 million.
You know, and then we're going to have the, so what I'm saying is when you start looking at looking ahead at the various expenses we're faced with, then we look at the revenue we've got coming in via taxation, via water and sewer sales, and we see how we can apply these funds and make this stuff work. So all I'm saying to you is I think there's a need. I think you've demonstrated there's a need. I think it would help us cut overtime. Give us your feel of what you think the cut would be, and that would help us with this decision. My opinion.
Director Hayes, did you have?
Yes, I have considered 6 items after our meeting this morning, Danny. And I want to quickly go through those. The 5th firefighter in the 3rd shift, we're already 2/3 done with that. We've done the first 2. So I looked at that. It's already in the 2015 fire tax rate. The 37,615 is a relatively small number. It's only 18% of what we got in there for the Quint. So they're not comparable dollar values by any means.
Right.
There's no further personnel on the horizon, as you promised us this morning. I took that as a promise. The 2015 fire tax is already down from 2014, and it's in the town budget for 2015. Given those 6 considerations, I voted the first time not to authorize the 3rd shift 5th guy. I'm going to change my vote.
Okay. Anything else, Jim? Director Carr?
Danny, just out of curiosity, you know how many fire departments are in Texas?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, according to a 2012 FEMA study, there's about 1,435. 71.9% of those are volunteer. If you go countrywide, there's top 25 states that have fire departments. They're like 97% of volunteer. And you know, your group does a great job. I mean, it was just demonstrated this weekend. But you need to be aggressive on what I asked, and I think the rest of the board, you know, said on the volunteers. If the bar is set that high, what are the other communities doing? Do they require 36 hours in a month? I don't know. But if you go by numbers, if you have 20 people that can give 8 to 20 hours, and you only have 3 that can give 36, obviously I'd rather have the 20. And you can supplement them if someone gets hurt, someone goes on vacation. Right now, you're utilizing part-time people. In fact, one of them, I think, is the one that just left a few months ago. Is that right? So the part-time people, I mean, they don't have the benefit cost. They don't have the insurance cost because they already have it with another. A lot of our firefighters do the same thing. They work, you know, part-time or whatever in other departments. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. So
But you have to look at the demographics of Trophy Club, too. You know what the average income of this town is?
what does that matter?
It matters a lot when you put in 60 and 70 hours a week to make this income to live in the homes that we have in Trophy Club. We're not a.
So all your firefighters live in Trophy Club?
No, none of them live in Trophy Club.
So I'm not asking them to live in
I'm
Trophy.
just saying what you're trying to say is building the volunteer base to offset this staffing issue with volunteers. They're just not out there.
Some of your own firefighters live in one community and volunteer in another community. Is that not true?
Yeah, I have
Okay.
several of them living in south
we
of
have
Fort
some-
Worth, and
And you said you had a volunteer in Roanoke. And the point being, what I'm getting at is, you need to be more aggressive on this volunteer search. It can help you and benefit you greatly, and keep the cost down for the people that do live in this community.
Okay, any other comments? Danny, I don't know that I understand all of this overtime cost here. I assume on this sheet, these are scheduled overtime.
because they're scheduled overtime. numbers.
Right. Now, if you have another firefighter, what is that gonna do to scheduled overtime?
It'd take the scheduled overtime down to, I won't have to backfill that fourth position because I'll have the fifth man to cover the fourth position.
Right, okay, what's the number? I need the dollar number that would be reduced.
That's what the point I was on, Danny. With this chart, you can actually show what you think that dollar reduction is gonna be.
In other words, you've got, just take, vacation coverage, 24,000.
That's a shift of 4.
Yeah.
Okay, if any one of those 4, like in Hurd, Booz, Rusker, Johnson, if any one of those 4 take off their allotted time in vacation, this is, it would cost to cover, Lieutenant Hurd, it would cost $3,120 to cover his shift for the vacation, backfill on the
Okay.
fourth position.
Okay, so, if,
Okay,
yeah, I'd like to,
Huh? I'm sorry.
I'd like to see how much total, estimated, savings there would be
On-
from the
if you
fifth
look at
man in terms of, both scheduled and unscheduled. I realize you can't plan for that, but scheduled overtime, dollar value, how much would that reduce?
If you look down, the top bracket is vacation, the
Yeah.
second bracket is sick time, and the third bracket is personal time. This is stuff that they accrue every year.
Right.
This is time that's allotted to them. The
Right.
bottom line to it, if we were to use part-time to cover all these slots, the savings would be $42,000. If we used, if it was overtime, it'd be $93,000. If we couldn't find part-time or that's what, not the savings, that's what it cost.
Danny, what I think he's asking is, what I was trying to drill down to is, okay, in this budget, if you go, the sheet we used on August 6th is showing overtime 46,772. I think in the new budget book it changed slightly. If you don't have the fifth person for the third shift, what is the change in your total overtime budget?
Fifth person and the
That's all
Yes.
that's all he wants.
Yes.
And that's what that number is. This is one shift. This is one shift. If one shift with 4 people had to cover that fourth position with one of these people being out for one reason or another, whether it's vacation, sick, or personal, to say that it would cost $42,000 in part-time and $93,000 in overtime if it was done that way. But with the fifth person, you don't have to do that. You don't have to cover the 42,000 or the 93 because you're backfilling with the fourth person with that fifth slot.
What's your estimate on the yearly cost of a or a firefighter, starting at
The
the
yearly
low?
cost
Yeah.
on the mud side is
Salary, benefits,
Training.
training,
$37,615.
how much?
$37,615.
That's about right for the mud side.
Yeah,
That's
that's
with
that's
50%.
mud.
It's
So
very
you
good.
double, it's like 75,000 or something like that.
Now, how much of that's, to help me out, Danny, how much of that 75,000 that this fifth, fireman would cost, would be, covered by scheduled overtime reductions?
I think that, let me answer that, Danny. There really wouldn't be any reduction in scheduled overtime. That there couldn't be because the firefighters work 56 hours per week. So there's always, their schedule's gonna require that they have 16 hours of overtime built into their schedule. What the graph that you all were looking at shows is a reduction in unscheduled overtime.
Okay,
Time that you can't budget for. You don't know when it's going to happen. And so it's not really, I mean, we can kind of make some projections going forward, but what we tried to look backwards at what did we save by having those people, by not having the unscheduled overtime. And that's what you're seeing on that chart. That's not the overtime that's built into the person's salary because they work 56 hours.
okay, I understand. I still don't have a number for unscheduled overtime that would be saved.
Jim, that's exactly what I was suggesting to him, is if he'll show us what his unscheduled overtime for
terms of
2014
I'm-
is going to be, and then if he can project what he thinks 2015 would be, then we've got some number that we
To-
can put
to
some math
subtract from the
to,
75,000
and we can see
to
how much of the
what the net-
37,000 we can pay for.
See what the net cost is. That's where I'm trying to get to. I don't express myself real well sometimes, but that's what I was trying to get at. Danny, another question that's not directly related, but when you have a four-man crew and one of them goes on vacation, does that shift work then during that time with three people?
No, I mandate with 4, 2 on the engine and 2 on the medic.
And then you
I
pull
backfill,
part-time
I keep
people.
4 people.
You pull part-time people in too.
And I bring a part-time, I work really diligently on keeping a part-time for that slot. My problem with the part-time guys is I use certified firefighters with the state of Texas. They're only allowed to accumulate 500 hours a year in part-time work under the commission rule. So I have to shuffle these part-time people, and I don't have that. I have 6 part-timers on the books right now. And, you know, they have schedules too, and they work for other departments, yada, yada, yada. So, we play this shell game with trying to get coverage. When we can't get part-time coverage, then I backfill with the lowest possible person that I can bring in, as far as that coverage. Now, when
Then
a
all-
lieutenant's off.
You
I
bring
re-
in, I'm sorry, you bring in someone from an off shift.
Yes, I bring in somebody from an off shift.
Okay.
And what I do there is if a lieutenant's out,
Yeah.
I mandate that a driver fill that position because that's a supervisor's position.
And that costs something
And that
to
costs
bring
more than
somebody
just a
in,
regular
but
firefighter.
I'm still looking for a number that I haven't gotten.
And-
And that's gonna be, okay, you have X many weeks of vacation that has to be filled in, by paying someone else to come and cover that. And what I'm looking for is an annual basis total, how much that cost you.
Built-in overtime coverage in the budget right now is $39,970. The built-in sick and vacation coverage
Yeah.
is $46,801.
Okay, but a good bit of that would be, if you had a fifth man, would that have any effect on having to cover vacations and so forth?
Yes, it would. And when you,
I mean, if you have a four-man shift and one of them's gone, then somebody's gotta come from somewhere to cover it.
Right.
If you got a 5-man shift, you may cover it with 4 people.
right.
Is
I
that
do-
right?
Yeah, I do cover for a minimum of 4 people in the station.
Yeah, okay, okay. I still don't have a number I'm looking for, but I'm beginning to get an idea anyway, so, okay, further
And we-
questions from
And we
anybody?
did an average sick and vacation calculation. The average sick time that the lieutenants, and I banked them in 3, is about 108 hours a year in sick time. Vacation, about 300 hours, and that's the 3 of them combined in their allotted vacation time. And then their sick and overtime, or sick and vacation is 408. That's a $17,000 number as far as their scheduled or unscheduled sick or vacation. And then I have engineers at 144 hours, and I have firefighters at 432 hours, because there's more firefighters than there is the other 30.
Okay, for other questions? Neil, could you possibly help me come up with the number that I'm asking Danny for? Do you understand what I'm looking for?
Yes, I do.
I still have to have a number to subtract from the 75,000. It may be, maybe I'm a little simple-minded, but I haven't gotten that yet as to what the fifth person would actually save us in terms of scheduled and unscheduled overtime that we can take off of, that we're gonna spend regardless of whether we have the fifth guy.
I think I have it targeted from what I'm looking at in the budget. If, Danny, do you have any free time tomorrow?
Sure.
Okay, early in the morning or later in the day? What works for you? I didn't know what time you might be available, that's all.
I'm available anytime tomorrow.
All right, because I have some other commitments. If I came up to the fire station at 8:30, would that be okay?
Jim,
Yes, sir.
think in terms of off 37,000, not 75, 50%.
Yeah, okay, I was talking about the total cost of the town, so, but, yeah, okay, thank you, Jim. Jennifer, I don't think that, if I understood everybody, I don't think we're ready tonight to make a final decision on that budget item. Am I correct, directors?
I think we still have some time, so, but let me get with the chief and we will work out the number that I think that you're looking for.
Okay, that's the only thing that means anything to me.
When's our next meeting?
Our next meeting's the 16th, but I can
September.
submit that information to Jennifer, and Jennifer can then disseminate it to the board members.
Yeah,
How are
I'm
we
gonna say, we're gonna have to, if we don't decide on that tonight, which is fine, and it probably is necessary anyway, but we're going to have to plan a special meeting, and we were gonna talk about that towards the end of the meeting, because the town has to advertise the, emergency services assessment in the newspaper, and that has to go out in the newspaper September the 6th. They're not gonna be making some decisions that affect the fire budget till August the 26th. And until they make those decisions and you all make these decisions, I can't tell anyone what the tax rate or the emergency services assessment's going to be. So it's absolutely fine to move this, but I did want to throw that out there. We're definitely gonna need to have a special meeting at the end of August.
I think that's the only way, maybe I can make a decision on
Sure.
how to vote on this, is to have a number and then a special session. So if we have to, we do. Director
If-
Clark.
If Neil's gonna put those numbers, I mean, you mentioned how it affects, we're gonna be purchasing a Quint. I'd like to see if you could put the whole picture together. With the,
Column A, column B, yeah, I'll do it.
I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to happen this week, but
Oh, no, we're running out of time, but
Maybe
we don't have to have it this
Monday.
week.
yeah, maybe
All
next
right.
Monday.
Next
Okay.
Monday.
The Quint, if I understand it, Jennifer,
Saturday.
you put the Quint in there, principal and interest at a full year.
Yes.
Now, Neil spoke this morning saying he was uncertain on a lease buyback situation, whether you had to put the first year up front, or whether if you don't get the Quint until January 1st or May 1st or whenever you get it, the $208,262 that's in there for the ladder truck, principal and interest for 2015, unless you're obligated to pay a full year's lease, and I doubt these leasing companies care when the end of our fiscal year is. They probably want to go 12 months to 12 months to 12 months.
Exactly.
And so I think that, first place, I think the 37,000 and any inroads that Danny could make to that by reducing further overtime, as far as I'm concerned, that's gravy. I don't think the 37,000 is significant enough number to come back and have another meeting and hold the town up on making a decision. That's my feeling.
Okay. Unless somebody wants to make a motion,
Well, I just think, I will meet with Danny. I will have information this week to give to Jennifer. Jennifer will give it out, and then we can talk about if there's a need for a special meeting, we can do that afterwards.
Yeah.
Jim, that half position's already in this budget.
I
And
know
if it's apparent there's no reason to reconsider it, then we don't have to have another action. So the only thing that could happen now is we make the determination not to fund half the position.
I don't think the town can operate on the supposition that we have it in the budget, but we haven't voted whether to add it or not. Add the fifth guy, or the third shift guy. So if I were the town, I'd say, tell me yay or nay, are you gonna add this guy?
Well, we could do the reverse and say, tell us, yea or nay, are you funding
They got
half
it.
the EMS?
They got it in their budget.
but now we have
Yeah,
it
but
in the
that doesn't
budget.
mean it's gonna stay in their budget.
Well, and there are some
A lot
other,
of things in their budget
Yeah,
that kinda
there's-
moved last night.
yeah, there's some other things too, as far as the, that we're still waiting to get, as far as what merit, COLAs, that sort of thing, that affects our firefighter budget too. So we are waiting on them as much as they're waiting on us, and I think probably the best way to approach this is just to have a special meeting at the end of the month. And that gives y'all a little more time to, get information together on this position, and there may be other things you want to look at too. We haven't even got to the real budget yet.
Jennifer, am I correct that our current budget contains the additional firefighter?
Yes, it does.
It's in there, okay. So unless there's a vote against it, it's already in there. So, okay, if we can move on. Item B, Information Technology Services. We have a speaker, the Honorable Mayor Nick Sanders. We would love to have your comments.
I didn't know if you were going to have any questions of Mike Pastor or not. I just texted him. He's back in his office working on a problem that said you're starting the item now. So I think he'll be up here. Did the email or the document he sent you today, have y'all distributed that?
The overview of the current backup strategy I'm passing out right now.
Okay. So obviously you hadn't seen it, so hard to have questions about it. If Mike gets here, he probably could answer better than I could, but I have reviewed that. I wanted to give you some background information. If you did not know, the council took action to have 2 of its members to get heavily involved in that particular problem. And Rylan Rowe and myself did that. So I just got the text that said he's still working on things. He's going to be working on it for hours, so try to answer what questions you might have.
Let me ask you this, Nick. Have you had a solution for the security problem in that this board and this MUD director, if the social security numbers of people get out of the building department or their credit card numbers, Mike Pastor or Nick Sanders is not going to be held responsible for that. We are. Have you solved that problem of giving us an assurance that your town IT department does not have access to our files and our emails?
I didn't know that was a question, so I'm not prepared to answer that. Sorry about that. As far as credit card numbers, it is my understanding from being on the board previously that none of that is kept in the STW software. It's kept elsewhere, but I may be wrong. Because you have a payment service that you process through if you do a credit card payment. And so the STW software didn't retain that data. So that was the understanding from when we went through this before on the board. As far as socials, the socials in STW, as far as I know, are not encrypted, meaning that if someone could get to the database by some means and knew a login and a password and knew how to get to it, they probably could find a social if that was the case. Now, I may be wrong. That's a question to ask STW. Is the Social Security number encrypted? Now, what that means is that there are 2 ways to accomplish that task. One is that in the software you can write a routine that encrypts the social and then you store it, and the only way to decrypt it and to see it in raw text is that you have to have the routine to decrypt it. And that would be a proprietary method, meaning that STW would have the only way to accomplish that task through their software. The other way is through the database engine itself, DB2, that you can define a field as encrypted, and it uses an encryption algorithm that is different, and therefore it's not written by STW. But if I had access to the DB2 database and was an administrator, I can perform a decrypt on that field and I would see it. So that's less secure than the method of STW writing it, but if STW went away and you didn't have the routine to decrypt, then guess what? You're in trouble. So actually in our company that we deal in Social Security numbers, we wrote our own encryption routine. So, and we provide a decryption tool in an escrow agreement that's deposited with an escrow company, and so if we disappeared from the face of the earth, they actually have access to that software to decrypt it. So we get around that.
Excuse me, can I say something? We do not collect social security numbers.
For payroll, don't
Well,
you?
for payroll, yes,
that's-
but not in billing.
Not utility billing. Are we talking about
Right.
billing or just in general?
Well, I didn't know what I was talking about, but guess I'm talking about pay.
Okay,
Payroll,
right.
right.
Payroll would be the only place you have a social,
Right,
and you don't collect it in utility billing.
right.
Right, so if your question was about utility billing, there was a shorter answer. I'm sorry, gave you too much.
Director Carr, you have a
Yes,
question.
Okay.
Mayor Sanders, I mean, this is,
Can I finish what I was gonna say?
sorry about that.
All right, sorry. Now, where was I? Okay, anyway, so Ryland Rowe and myself have met with Mike Pastor twice. We have done a detailed review of the data sets. Data sets can be a database or physical files. We have had him make a spreadsheet, which I don't know that he gave to you.
He did.
Okay, of all the data sets and when he's backing up and that kind of thing, which needs to be reviewed to look at and see, does it meet your requirements in what you might need, how critical the data is.
Well, I think what he gave me is a spreadsheet of the data sets and where he feels they should be
That's
backed
correct.
up, what level they should be backed up to be used in the assessment. That was my
correct.
understanding
That's
of what
right.
it is.
And because you're the owner of the data, and so you need to kind of look at it and see, does
Is
it
that
need more
enough?
stringent, less stringent? How do you feel about it? So that's one piece. The second piece is that what he provided to you in writing today was more than what you need, because it's in fact everything in IT that needs to get backed up and is backed up. So most of those servers at the top, maybe all of the first page, I can't remember exactly where that was, has nothing to do with MUD. You'll see a little legend there that'll have an M beside the data set, or joint, maybe is J, I don't have it.
S for shared.
S for shared, okay, well, okay. So there's a legend there that kind of defines the data, and you can look at your particular data. From the insistence of council representatives, there is a company that we have selected. I don't know that we have contracted with them officially, but we do have an estimate where we are buying time by the hour, and it was 20 hours of work. Same company gave a first estimate months ago, and it was a month's worth of work, so it was a lot bigger. And we felt like it really didn't need to be that many hours, and do you want me to stop? Okay. And so we said, look, let's just buy a block of hours, and there's a discount if we bought a block like 20 as opposed to pay per hour. And the intent of that is to take the data of how frequently do we do the data sets, where are we going to put them, where are we going to store them, how is it backed up, how do we recover, and give some advice that helps select methodology and device if we need devices. So here's one of the things we learned. The backups that you see that are being done daily and every 15 minutes or whatever those might be for you, because of virtualization of servers and data, the technology is such that you can back up the entire server, all of its software, and all of its data in a matter of minutes. And it does that because of technology. And if you're storing that data locally, you can make copies of that relatively fast. But a server with all of its data might consist of a terabyte or 500 gig, a lot of data because it's stored in that fashion. And restoring that is relatively fast, and in some cases less than 15 minutes to recover an entire server and all of its data sets. The problem becomes when you try to store that off-site. If the devices we have today are connected via USB connection and not extremely fast, so it takes, in some cases, for a server with all its data sets to be copied from a device that's in the server room to a device that can be remote 8 hours or longer. So, wow, that says I can't, if I'm making a backup every 15 minutes and I want to keep every one of those off-site, I can't even accomplish that task. So that's not a reasonable method of doing the job. So one of the things we came up with, we do have an extremely fast fiber connection to the fire station. The fire station has an equipment room where things are stored. It's protected. We could purchase a remote device that talked to our servers via fiber. And so that copy time to go from the normal backup that's happening every 15 minutes or every hour could happen real fast. Another option is that you put it in the cloud, but then you're limited by the speed of the AT&T connection to this building. So that's not near as fast as putting it like to the fire station. Then the other piece that we are looking at is how do we take more off-site? Quite frankly, to the fire station is off-site. Of course, if a tornado came through here, it might get both buildings. So maybe that's not the best off-site. And so one of those is that they have hot swappable drives so that after all the data's back up, they can walk over there, unplug the drive, and take it to the bank, or could give it to you to take home if you felt better having possession of it to know that it actually happened. So the other piece that the consultant is going to help us with is developing procedures for restore and testing. So there are two things that happen to try to test your restore procedures. One is that I restore to a secondary server and storage just to see that the restore works. And I might, in fact, test. But I probably wouldn't do extensive testing. I would at least attest, can I log in? Can I do a query? Can I pull up an account? That kind of thing. Maybe run a report. The other is a live test. And the live test is such that you say, okay, this Saturday, general ledger's going down. We're not going to make any entries after a certain hour. And we're going to restore the back. We're going to make a backup and restore the backup to the live site and actually go in and test. That's the only true thing. If it fails, of course, you're counting on the fact that the backup you made 10 seconds before you restored actually was a good backup. And obviously you've got other backups. So Rylan and I have been working with Mike to help develop those standards, and neither one of us are wanting to be totally dictating that aspect because we're not here all the time. But hiring a consultant to help look at that who's got more experience in that area with virtual machines, we think is important. So whatever you decide to do with backup or software in the future, town's going to do that, just to take our own insurance for that. The other thing that we've done is that we spent a fair amount of time analyzing what went wrong with the email fiasco. I'm going to call it a fiasco, but nevertheless. And there's a note towards the bottom of that letter that talks to that briefly about what went wrong. And part of the problem was that depending on your PC settings, because you run Outlook from your PC and your desktop, there were local files. Getting all those local files and merging them with the backup to get current took a lot of time. Not a very good method of doing business, but that's the way things were done back in the old versions of Outlook. So whatever you do with email in the future, the town has already authorized the movement of our email to what's called Hosted Exchange, and we have already upgraded a few people from the old version of Outlook to the new version of Outlook, at least web-wise, not desktop-wise, and have been running for over a week with no issues. The issues that we have about people not getting email seem to be an issue of how relaying email happens. In other words, Jim Thomas's email that's jthomas@tcmud.org is not the real email address. It forwards to a different email address. In order to get by this technology problem that's happened in the web and with email, it needs to be a jthomas@tcmud.org email account, a real email account, which would eliminate potentially using your personal email. There's advantages and disadvantages of that. I have an nsanders@trophyclub.org real email address in the server. It does send a copy to nick@winocular.com. That way, because I'm not sitting there in the town email and hours could go by before I look at it, at least my own email pops up and says, oh, look there, there's an email. I try not to respond to that in my own email because that means now my response is in my own email and I'd probably never find the thing. So I then flip over to a screen that's logged into the Exchange server and I respond and write emails there. That's the disadvantage of really solving the problem wherever you provide that service. And whether you go with Gmail or Exchange server or whatever that might be, it's going to be different and there's going to be a learning curve. Mike is working on written procedures to say what are the differences from what our staff is used to the new system. So if you choose to move to hosted Exchange server, here's how it would be different. And therefore, where do you click and how do you deal with the certain things that maybe you want to do so? For instance, in the conversion, one of the things that came out was that my salutation that you put in your email so that it says it's always from Jennifer McKnight and your phone number and all that stuff didn't convert. So you had to go in and do that. So he's researching to see, can that convert, or does that mean that when everybody converts, they got to go put their salutation in? Not too bad if that's what we have to do, but everybody needs to know to do that, right? And if it's got a graphic in it, then you're going to have to deal with that. Okay. So we are trying to address those issues. Don't really know the cost of any hardware that might be needed or recommended to deal with some of the backup restore issues that I just delineated for you. So I can't answer that at this point, but those are going to be solved as far as the town is concerned. So if you do stay with using those services and those servers, those will be solved also. But unfortunately, I can't tell you what that cost is today. I don't anticipate that being a huge number because storage isn't extremely expensive. But we do have to get it to where we can get off-site backup maybe more frequently. Now, from my opinion, an off-site backup done weekly is quite sufficient. I would hate to try to recover a week's worth of transactions no matter what anyway, because a lot happens in a week. So I would do everything I could to get back to an hourly backup or a daily backup before I ever went to a weekly backup. Because it's like, how do I find what happened in a week, right? All those payment transactions, all those online things, it's just amazing. So off-site backup to me is something I hope I would never go to other than maybe document storage of drawings or maps or things that you might have. I might go to offset to get that because that's not something that changes daily. And I even talked to him about those things that are in Winocular, and what I didn't know is whether or not you still put any new documents in Winocular. Do you?
Yes.
Okay. What happens in Winocular is that once a data set is closed, you can delete a document and it disappears from the disk. But you can never add to it. The system doesn't let you. If you add a document, then it goes to a new data set. So that old data set never grows. It could get smaller, but never grows. So if I had a backup that was a month old after it closed, doesn't care. I could restore it at any time. Worst case scenario, I restored a document that has no way of finding it, but is there and took some disk space. So we already planned for that kind of problem that says, I don't have to back up every gig every night. And if I'm doing so, I'm kind of wasted my time because it never changes, at least in that sense. So I hope I've given you more than you need, and probably did.
Do I get any credit hours for that presentation?
I hope so. I hope you give me some credit for that. And I'll try to answer what I can, but I can't answer some things that you maybe need, and apologize for that. So if you, whatever you've got, I'll try to
You
answer.
said Mike was coming down, or,
No, not unless you have a question that I can't answer,
I mean,
but I can probably tell him to come if you want me to.
he just gave an extensive presentation on backup. There's other issues other than just the backup. That was just one thing. You know, there's service, there's equipment upgrades, and.
I can't answer those.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wasn't prepared to do that at all, but I would answer what I could. You want me to tell him to come?
Probably wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
While we're waiting on that, I do want to cover our meeting today. And Nick, you did a lot of my work for me, so I appreciate that. But I did meet with Pastor and with Mike Sly today to talk about the latest and greatest proposal that they've received from AV Tech. And as you recall, when we met back at the workshop, we were looking at about 2,500. Well, they've narrowed it down to about 20 hours for the assessment. So our share, the total cost will now be about 3,900 for the professional services to do this assessment. And I want to talk about what the assessment's going to be in a moment. But our share of that would be 1,175. They did agree to do this. This is kind of for your benefit. Mike told me today that he was signing off on this so that they could get started. What they're going to be looking at in this assessment, I asked, could I kind of get a scope of services and a timeline? And what the scope of services, they're specifically looking, as Nick said, at the backup. They're going to kind of assess the current environment, determine our goals and objectives on how often certain data sets need to be backed up, determine an acceptable risk level for each data set. In other words, how much could we lose? Is a day's worth okay? Is a week's worth okay? If it's, as Nick said, if there's not a lot of changes to that data, then maybe a week ago is fine. But for like STW, an hour makes a difference. All the accounts change very quickly. So that's more a higher risk level. From that, they're going to summarize the storage that they believe is required and recommend some options for data storage locations and the infrastructure. They're going to be looking at kind of a primary system and a secondary system. As far as the primary is where the where things are backed up first, and then a secondary system that can kind of serve as a backup to the backup. Pastor was working on this documentation that I provided to you, and he provided that to me today of what is our current backup strategy. And that's what this explains. And actually, since you're here, I do have a question for you about something on here, but we'll get to that in a minute. Once all of those things are determined through this assessment, then there likely will be some costs associated. And I asked what the town was planning to do with that, because we're not going to have this completed in time to, add additional costs to the budget. But what we talked about doing is, if it's something that, if there are additional costs, we will, both the town and the MUD will need to do a budget amendment. From our side, that shouldn't be a huge issue, because we've now changed the budget, as you directed me to at the budget workshop, to include the dollar values for using the outsourced IT, which was a higher cost this first year. So if there's some costs in there, in other words, we can absorb it in the dollars that we have. We'll just have to kind of readjust the budget. So we can handle that. I also asked a question if the board decided that they wanted to go with the outsourced IT. As we all realize, that can't happen by October 1st, any way whatsoever. So we're going to need to stay with the town anyway about it for some length of time. And so we talked about taking the CMO cost that we have as far as personnel and turning it into a monthly cost, and then however many months that's going to be, if it's through January, it would be like $20,000. Plus, there's some costs that would be associated with what we're calling the shared stays and the shared goes, and that means that there's some items that no matter what we do on the rest of the IT, we're still going to continue to share those items with the town, and that's things like the phone system, the AV AV equipment that's here in this room, the doors, the security, that sort of thing. So we will have to kind of divide up what those costs are. Those will need to be paid for next year, but they're in our budget. And then there may be some things that we have to renew that we can't renew for just a 3-month period. We would probably have to pay the whole year on those. So Mike is supposed to be working on collecting those costs so that we can have that as a side note if it's decided to go our separate way on IT. I think I've covered everything that we talked about in the meeting, other than the timeline. The board in the workshop asked me to let them know that we needed a report by September 30th, and that is what I sent to the town after the board meeting. From some discussions this morning, we talked about our next board meeting is September the 16th. And I did ask Mike if it's possible for them to push forward a little faster on the assessment so that maybe we could have that report by that meeting so that we can finalize our budget. He was going to check with the consultants because, of course, they have to line up their jobs, and I don't know, maybe he can speak to that if he was able to talk to him today. But he will let us know as soon as possible if that's something they can move up in their priority list and get us a report by our next board meeting. So that kind of covers what I wanted to cover as far as how this assessment's going to move forward and exactly what the scope of service is. It is dealing with the backup situation. I'll kind of pause and let y'all ask any questions of me or Mike.
Did you want to ask a question of Mike? You mentioned you had a question. We
Yes.
Get that, Jennifer.
Okay, Mike, on the overview of the current backup strategy, I noticed that it shows, okay, on when it's talking about, I'm going to be specific about STW. It shows that there is a backup rotation of 4 weeks. The backup time is 2 to 8 hours. And the size is 2 gigs to 280 gigs. Monday through Saturday, you do the 2 gig incremental at 2 hours. And then on Sundays, you do the big one, the 280. And it takes, I'm assuming that means it takes 8 hours to do that at
Correct.
8 hours. Right?
Correct.
Okay. So can you kind of, for my benefit and the board's benefit, just explain specifically on STW what this means as far as the backup goes? What is it, and you can use this if you need it, what you're saying exactly that you're
Okay.
doing with the data so that
The-
they'll have an understanding.
The two servers, the STW and the payment server, are both virtual servers, which in the backup process, we use a product called Veeam that backs it up. And what it does is it takes a snapshot. If any of y'all are familiar with like Norton Ghost, some sort of image-based product. So it takes the whole 9 yards. It doesn't take any particular part. It takes the entire thing, and it backs it up into Veeam's backup file. So every day it takes what's equivalent of 100% of the machine. From a recovery standpoint, if I need to mount that, it takes 15 minutes or so, and I could have a working image up and running. And that's the plus on doing the image backup using Veeam. The day-to-day activity is what's referred to as incremental. So any changes that are made are basically what is backed up, and then the full synthetic is on Saturday, and it compresses all of the incrementals into a full backup. So those are how those are done. So it's all of the data, the server, the operating system, the configuration, the whole 9 yards. Does that help?
Yes. But when you're doing this Veeam backup Monday through Saturday, it's like copying, it's doing a mirror from one server to another. Is that what I'm understanding?
It's effectively, yes, it's taking the data on the full synthetic, it's taking the data 100% because it's taking all the incrementals and compressing them down into one. But every day, Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, One of the days is the full and the rest of the incrementals. The incrementals are just the changes that are made. So in other words, we got to roll back one, it depends upon when the failure is. You take one incremental, run it to the next incremental, and potentially run it to the next incremental before you're fully done. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
How often are they checking the integrity of these backups?
We randomly check something out of one of the backup sets, usually once a month.
You have been doing that? Or
Yeah.
you
The exchange it happened somewhere between 28 days and a couple of months is why we didn't catch it, because we had 10 backup sets and we just randomly grabbed something.
Okay, we've been talking about this backup, and it seems like it went from 14,000 at the joint meeting down to 7,500. Now it's at 3,900.
Correct. The 14 was a placeholder. It was something because I didn't have an answer on what it cost. The quote I got after that was 75, and it was for budgetary that we were looking to roll it into the following year. And then it was, let's get it done now. I went back to him, and he gave me the revised quote. We've also done some business with the vendor, so he's got a little bit better knowledge of what we've currently got. So it reduces the amount of learning curve on their side as far as what they need to find out about.
So the past month, we haven't made any headway as far as assessing anything, right? Other than assessing that we went from placeholder to 3,900?
We have not done anything on it, correct?
Okay. Okay, and then what I was getting at is, this is one piece of the whole service. I mean, there's equipment. What projections do you have for upgrades? I don't know where it was, but I heard you say, well, we're planning on upgrading something else at a cost, or what do you have planned for upgrades that we would be exposed to?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can get that for you either later today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, when you give a presentation, I mean, I'd like to see what we're going to be exposed to, because right now we're looking at going to M3. We have upfront cost, and we can say, okay, this is going to be our initial cost. Going forward with the town, if we choose to stay, we need to know what costs we can expect in the next year, next 2 years, or whatever.
Okay.
All costs, not just one piece of equipment, or you might have equipment slated to be upgraded. I don't know if you're still running, what versions you're running, if everybody's at the same version of Microsoft or whatever, but, computers wear out if you have that slated, and maybe a lot of them are on the mud side.
Okay. I've got a breakout, so that shouldn't be hard to get to you.
One of those, the Adobe upgrade.
Yes,
Big
Nick.
one for the town.
Next year was the Adobe upgrade, but that was something you guys have already seen and we've talked about.
Yeah. And then the exchange, I think you mentioned, is that costing anything?
Yes, it does, and I do not believe it's in either side of the budget. That was my mistake, because we kept talking about it, but we never actually put it in.
You know what that is, out of curiosity?
Off the top of my head, I want to say 21 or 2,200 on the mud side.
Okay, I guess I've made it pretty clear, I need all cost. Anything that we expect next year, or that you're gonna have a planned schedule, do 10 here, 10 there, 10 there, whatever it is. So we can get anything that we're exposed to.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, one more. Jennifer mentioned about the time frame, and I think to be fair to the town, and also help our staff, we may need to cut that September 30th date down. I know the town relies on some of our numbers, we rely on some of their numbers, and I think the mid-September would be, beneficial to both entities.
I think what we're saying there is our next meeting's the 16th. And if we could, instead of getting the information at the meeting, Monday, the 15th, if everything was put together, could you be given it to the directors or to the staff of the directors? So we have a chance to review it before the meeting. It would be really beneficial, because at that point, we're running out of time as far as the budget. So,
I'll see what I can do, but
Yeah.
I mean, I realize you aren't gonna have everything, but you can do, you've been in this business a long time. You can at least give a projection cost.
Well, I think that goes back to what he has to do is contact the VTech, or AVTech, sorry, and see when they can get this assessment done. Because the result of the assessment is going to state the
Correct.
infrastructure needed, correct?
Correct.
Right. So I did ask him today in the meeting, were you able to get a hold of them today, or?
No, it was not. But I hope
So-
to hear from him tomorrow morning.
Okay, so I will let y'all know as soon as I hear from Mike if they feel that they can meet that, get it to us by the 15th.
Any further questions for Mike? Anyone?
I'll ask one more.
Go right ahead, Kevin.
Did I take your question?
Yeah, you can have mine.
In addition to the numbers and expenditures, I'd like to know what the workflow, if something is, if we have an issue, what our flow or the procedure is, because I do not, and I don't know how much clearer I can do, I do not want a town manager having to approve something that we have to get done, okay? I know you report to the town manager, but I do not want a town manager dictating how we run our entity and when we can have a piece of equipment that we're gonna purchase. Is that clear? Crystal clear?
Okay.
Okay.
Not, okay.
I think that's everything, Mike, unless there's another question. No further questions. Thank you for taking time to come up and listen to us for a few minutes.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it. Any other IT comments or questions? It was? I wasn't smart enough to ask it, so I'm glad you did. Any other IT questions by anybody? Any discussion further on any of those things?
Are we gonna do anything about the date, or?
I think we need to do something about the date. We talked about it. Again, I would like this, since our next meeting, scheduled meeting
Right.
is the 16th, we need to hear back from Mike and the town manager that they can have this information to us. I'd like to see it on the 15th because it gives it. Okay. And make the motion to amend that where we had given the town until September 30th to get the required information to us regarding IT, to change that till Monday, September 15th, because of the necessary functions that we have to do regarding the budget when we meet on September 16th.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Jennifer, we're now down to other budget items, and I'll turn that over to you to go through the list.
Okay, really, just real quickly, the only things that have changed in the budget are the items that we talked about in the budget workshop. And what I did was I highlighted them in yellow so that it was easy for you to see what we changed. So I'll kind of quickly go through them. On the utility fees and the revenues in the general fund, we reduced that significantly because we talked to the town permitting, and they're only expecting, 70 permits for this next year was.
Yeah, I think they were budgeting 60, just to be very conservative.
Yeah. So we dropped that, considerably as to what we think we'll get for utility fees. We also dropped the gas well revenue because we don't think we're ever going to see that again. That was on page 2, I'm sorry. After that, you can skip all the way over to page 7, which is the fire department. The salary and wage line changed. If you look back at GFH, it was simply that the COLA, we were told to remove the COLA, which I did, and the merit was changed to cover the full year. Previously, it was a 3% merit, but it was only for a half a year, so it was amounted to 1.5%. But what we were instructed to do was to change that to make the merit for a full year, so it started on October 1st. So it actually doubled what was in your previous budget
That's not,
to 3%.
that's not what the council voted on, or at the, I think it was 2 meetings ago, they voted to start, mid-year. Is that, Mr. Lamont, is that accurate? I didn't address you correctly, Mayor Pro Tem Lamont. On the merit, didn't you all agree to start mid-year? Yes, 60,000. Okay.
Okay, well, can you all check with the town on that? We were told to make it the full year, so we'll check with them so that we can get that correct. Okay, the next item is on page 8, and we got some better numbers on fuel amounts based on last year's usage, so we changed that a little bit. One of the items that was inadvertently left out of the IT budget when it was provided to us, they are planning to upgrade some laptops for fire and EMS. These are very expensive laptops because they're those tough books. And so I noticed in the town's budget presentation, they had budgeted that, so I added it into ours, $82.50 for those replacement laptops into the fire department. That's on page 8.
And that's for how many? 4, 6?
I think it was 3.
Okay, on the, this kind of ties into the IT, doesn't it? So if we go a different way, do we get are those laptops part of the initial rollover, or?
Well, they belong to the fire department. I mean, they'll be, the tough books will be with the fire.
Okay, so we still have to pay for them?
Yes.
Okay.
This is really, if I remember right, for the paramedics or the EMS guys, I'm sorry, EMS.
Both. We have we have one on the engine, one on the Quint, and one that we rotate between the primary medic and the secondary medic.
Yeah, but again, it's mostly like for like medical procedures. I mean, the EMS needs to access information quickly.
No,
and that-
this is all of our CAD information, all the information we get from the county when we're toned for a call. All the call notes, and we get all of this information
Okay.
on the computer on fire and EMS when a call comes down.
Okay, so like one would be in each of the ambulances, or?
One in the ambulance and one in the fire truck and one in the Quint.
Okay, thanks. Next.
I think that's really it. There's some changes in the, on the schedules that affected what we went over in the front, but that's all. That's the only changes that you see from the last budget to this one. Yeah, that's it. That's all of the changes from the workshop right there. So unless you all have some questions about anything we changed from the workshop, or just any question at all about the budget, that's all I really have.
On the backhoe, is that a good price, or is it hot? Is it a conservative price on replacing that backhoe?
I think it's, it may be 5 or 10 high, just depends on how we outfit the backhoe. Just depends on which direction we go. We were looking at maybe getting an extender hoe so we can dig a little deeper. And some more of the lines are getting put in deeper now.
As far as maintenance of the aging infrastructure, you're comfortable with the amount you put in there for possible breaks and clamps and things like that?
I think so. It's I mean, it's a guess, but it's I think we have 75,000, and then we got 10 valves, and also I don't know if this is the right point to talk about the water line replacement.
Yes.
I learned this evening that the town originally I thought the town wasn't gonna be doing any street repair capital projects, but I learned today that actually the street Pin Oak is back on, and the small street Timberline Court. And possibly they're still looking at maybe doing Pebble Beach. It's a
And maybe
question mark.
Maybe Edgemere.
Conflict of interest guy. They'll make it one way.
And so I quickly added up all the footages on the pipes, and Pin Oak was close to 542 feet, and Timberline Court was in the range of 300 feet. Both of them are 6-inch, but when we put new water mains back in, we go with 8-inch. So I guess the question is if y'all want to participate with the town's capital projects, when they put in the streets, we redo the water mains.
Pebble Beach is pretty long. I mean, are they talking about the whole thing?
I asked Ed, he said he really wasn't clear which section. I told him, I said, I bet you, if I was gonna guess, it would be the section to the north, because I think it's in worse shape.
I mean, is there
I don't know.
time they're gonna share that with us, or, tell us what they're gonna do?
Yeah, I thought all the street projects were off the table, but I don't know when they got put back on. Was it this last meeting?
So I guess. Yeah, we need to know those things so we can plan rather than,
Mm-hmm.
have something like the roundabout where it costs us $240,000 unbudgeted money.
Well, and I think the question now is, do we have time to estimate the cost for doing those upgrades, and do we want to do that? I guess if we kind of look at the bottom line of where we are right now, my professional opinion, we don't have any money for this. But let's look at that. The way it looks like right now, we have a surplus of about $83,000 is what we have in our budget. I don't have any idea how much of that, if anything, it would do.
I was trying to think what we had for Pin Oak before. I want to say it was 60,000. Is that?
Pin Oak's been on their capital thing for 5 years, I think.
Pin Oak's been out there for like 20 years. Come on.
But we had it in our outlay.
I was thinking 100, but I could be wrong. I might be thinking too
I
much.
didn't know if you could pull it.
When did we have it in there before?
I thought it was in last year's.
I think we had.
I don't remember that.
It might have been 2 years. I think we moved that money over to the roundabout.
No, that was Indian Creek. We moved. They said they weren't going to do it till next year. The bulk of it came from Indian Creek.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is we need to know if they're moving ahead. We, especially, Pin Oak we can look at, I mean, but Pebble Beach, we need to know exactly from where to where.
Yeah, I measured 1,300 feet, but I don't know exactly what section they're doing.
All right.
Pin Oak in the budget
Okay, it was, I'm sorry, it was,
70,000?
it was in FY 13, Pin Oak waterline upgrade 70,000. But I don't know if it's the same length of Pin Oak. I don't know anything at all about
Yeah, it was the total length they were
Yeah,
redoing.
Pin Oak is so small, it's the total length. The truth is, there's more water flowing underneath the concrete over there than any place else because of the springs, but,
I don't know that included, I know that did not include engineering back in 13, because at that time, we were doing, I think, combined engineering, and we've stopped that to where we do engineering and the town does engineering. And so I would say that needs to be increased at least by 5. I really don't know. I mean, I'm just pulling that. So, but it does sound like, I guess what I'm saying, that 83 might be enough for Pin Oak. But then you mentioned others, and I don't know.
Yeah, Timberline Court, it's just a real short. No.
Timberline's like Pin Oak, it's roughly the same length.
Yeah, it's only 300 feet long. Right now, the water line goes up and kind of curves around. If we do the new design, it'll probably be straight ahead with a fire hydrant on the end, and then we just catch the long services. Try to eliminate that.
What are we doing on that lift station?
Yeah, I don't,
Down Fresh Meadow,
the what?
the lift station, relocating the line or access to it or whatever we determine.
I think Carl had a meeting with Keevan.
Yeah, we're still working on that.
Do we have money budgeted for that?
No.
Okay. Can you delete that from the tape, please?
If you, were- yeah, no.
Doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
One more item, Adrian. You got, I don't know if it affects you or not, but Cypress Court drainage inlets. So I don't know if you come into play with that.
Well,
That's on our
they just
capital
increasing the
expense.
inlet size.
I don't know the scope of it. I just know we put money aside for it. Those, I have two left hands when it comes to that stuff. But that's in this tax note I'm gonna do.
So is that upsizing the storm drain pipe also, maybe? Yeah, I don't,
Check it
okay,
out.
we'll look into it.
We better find out.
I mean,
What happened to this communication of, letting us know about this?
yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's a little,
helter-skelter.
if you all would like for us to find out, more information on those projects and work on, we'll have to get a good estimate. I mean, I can't give you an estimate tonight of what it's gonna cost to replace 400 feet of.
If you're really good.
Exactly. So, and what it looks like, I mean, I don't know if it's crossing a creek, if how many long services, short services, I don't have any idea till we look at it. And so, to me, it's not something we could make a decision on tonight by any means, but if, I guess the question is, do you all want us to try to get costs for those capital improvements together to bring back and include in the budget at our September meeting?
I think probably before us, you talked about a special meeting, let's, if possible, let's find out what exactly the town is planning so we can look at what our options are. Because we, especially Pebble Beach, that's a major, there's long sections of that, so we need to know. But if we don't do it at a special meeting that you referenced earlier, then let's do it at the September 16th meeting, because then we don't have any other option. But
Okay, any other items?
Well, it goes back to the unknowns that the town needs to provide us, and in turn, we have to provide them with a emergency assessment tax rate. And, you can't keep going on till the last minute, there's postings and things like that.
Right.
So I guess we need to, maybe have the general manager, I guess mandate a drop dead date from the town manager on, okay, when are we gonna know about these capital projects, and when are we gonna know about which way you're gonna go with the stipends, merits, COLAs, or whatever. Anything that affects us, we need to have that probably by the first week in September or something. Is that about right, Jennifer?
I think you're running even late, because if, like, we're talking about assessments and they're publishing on the 6th or the 8th of September, I think, I don't know what the timing would be, because you're talking about Labor Day week. You're already, 1st of September is Labor Day. And they're talking about publishing something on the 7th or 8th, that's the following Monday. I don't know if they're meeting on Tuesday, it doesn't give us much time. What I'm saying is, before the end of August, or whatever special meeting, we need to have all this information put together well before the end of the month. Because we have to make some decisions of what we're gonna fund and what we're not gonna fund, or what we're gonna reach in reserves to fund, period.
I don't have a problem with giving direction to the general manager by notifying the town manager that we need to have all items that will affect our budget, except for IT, which we, pretty much gave them the 15th, by the 1st of September. Does that sound right?
I wouldn't even, I'd give them I tell him by next Monday. I mean, there's no reason that we can't have, if the Pro Tem Mayor Lamont has the in your.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Lamont. All right. The four projects, Cypress, Pebble Beach, Timberline, Pin Oak, they're definitely in the town budget. They will definitely be upgraded, improved, and so forth. I mean, that's already done, decision.
Budget hasn't finalized. Somebody could come along, make a motion to pull it out, but my gut feeling is that it's gonna stay.
Okay, what do you believe is the timing for the town to finalize its budget?
September, so I think probably the second meeting in September will be around,
It would be the 23rd?
23rd.
Okay. I mean, but I think what we need to do is look at what the impact on our budget would be if we're gonna do the water lines like we normally do and something like this, and I think plan on it as long as we have and Kevin's absolutely right when he says, where it's merit pay, COLAs, stipends, we need to direct the manager, our general manager, to talk to the town manager, and then come back with us with recommendations on how it should affect our budget by the first of next week.
Can I ask a question too of Mr. Lamont?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem Lamont. When do you all decide the projects that are going to, or even when are these projects usually first brought forward to you?
July 31st, that's when they presented the first budget.
And those projects were in there?
Yes.
Okay. So what I think we need to do is, we being me, I need to make sure that, Adrian, you need to make sure that you're getting with the streets department far earlier than the August meeting with those items. If they've known about it since the end of July or sometime that they were creating that budget, then we could have been kind of pricing these things out as well.
When I asked him several weeks ago, he told me it was all pulled out. It wasn't, they wasn't gonna do it. And then that's why I asked you today, and so I called him. And he says, no, they're doing 2 streets, possibly a question mark, Pebble Beach, is what he told me.
And that's the big thing that gets me, is that they know we're involved in these street projects, okay? They know we have costs related to them. And we should be notified the minute they make that decision and determine it. We shouldn't have to ask them and go, are you doing anything different? There's a serious communication problem there.
I think that maybe when, I don't know, we'll kind of talk about, maybe there was a communication problem in that Ed thought you were saying that it's been approved in the budget and you were just asking what projects they're bringing forward to the budget. And so maybe we need to word it that way so that we have time to budget the cost for these, because to be perfectly honest, I think it's going to be very difficult to get an engineering proposal, and I can estimate this out using some estimation sheets that I keep, but you need to bring those forward very early, any projects that you want to bring forward, so that we
Okay.
can make sure we include them in the, if it's something we want to include.
And I would suggest at the next joint meeting that we have some ongoing communication, that when it does get near budget time, that we keep in communication with one another. If you have to do a water line, that we need to know about a street, and vice versa. So let's just set something up in advance that, what's in the planning stage? Is it a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan? But if we're gonna do something within the next budget cycle, we both should know about it. So,
As far as,
obviously, there was some kind of miscommunication somewhere along the line.
yeah, maybe we need to increase the communication budget. Sure it'd work.
I'm already in trouble. Let me go sit down.
We normally don't go out and just replace a line. We're trying to coordinate it when they replace streets. Is that correct?
That's been typically in the past.
Have we ever replaced the line on our own, other than something breaking? just gone out and said, well, let's replace this line.
And
I
how,
don't- I
how
can't
did you
remember
learn
any.
about those today?
I don't think so.
I called Ed, you know, when I talked to you in the
You
hallway.
guys can jump in at any time.
I said, have you looked at the budget? You know, you said, no, you didn't know nothing about
Hey,
the
Adrian.
project. So I called Ed. I said, hey, Ed, is there anything that y'all putting in the budget, or is it completely taken out? And he says, no, there's 2 of them that are in the budget, and possibly Pin Oak. That's.
Adrian, you and Ed have worked together for a long time. We've had this communication problem for a long time. So I would suggest that just on your personal friendship with the guy, 2 of y'all need to sit down and agree instantly that communications will flow back and forth between the 2 of you the second he knows something and the second you know something. Let's don't have this problem again. You 2 guys can work this thing out.
Sure.
And by the way, if it doesn't work out, then we go back to Mike Sly and say he's got a problem with an employee that won't communicate with us. Now, I don't want to do that because I think you and Ed can work this out. But problem again this year, we just can't seem to get it fixed. And the 2 players are the 2 players. They haven't changed.
I agree.
Take him to lunch or something. I mean,
At the town cost, of course.
That was gonna be my suggestion.
Jennifer, are we okay on this?
Yes, that's all I have. Do y'all have any questions about anything in there?
Are we gonna give Jennifer direction to notify the town that she needs the
Yes.
numbers that affect our budget by whatever date you were,
Well, I'm hoping by,
Next Monday, I
Next
think, is what
Monday.
Neil said.
well, when is, their meeting is the 26th, right?
already given.
But I think they don't meet till next Tuesday, right?
Yeah,
Is that right? So,
Yeah.
Tuesday, so. I
okay,
just-
well, you want to just amend it that they get back to us after their next meeting, which is
yeah,
next Tuesday.
by the day after their next meeting or something.
Right now, they have enough time to put things on the agenda to address our requirements for information, so we can move forward.
Okay.
You got it, Jennifer? Okay, anything else on the budget? Questions?
That's enough of a surprise.
Okay, that completes item number 7. Item 8, consider and take appropriate action to approve the July 2014 monthly financials. Renee, comments?
Director Carr called me today with a few questions, and we went over it, and I think he was okay with it, so I will turn it over to him.
Yeah, I had a question on, what is it, rental equipment and lease equipment, and it was in the budget for any disasters or things like that, which I was satisfied with. And that's, I make a motion that we, approve the, financials.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. There's no discussion. I'll call for the vote.
I got just
Oh,
one.
hold it.
Right.
Director Thomas.
Just an explanation on the 2,530% miscellaneous income recoding Murdoch's letter of credit.
Okay, last month, the letter of credit, the 70,700, I believe, that we received from the letter of credit from Murdod, I originally coded it to bank interest, and we recoded it to miscellaneous income this month. I took it out of bank interest and moved it to miscellaneous, so that's why that was an extraordinary item.
Okay, thank you.
That was one of my questions.
Any other questions? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Next item is reports and updates. General Manager's report. Jennifer?
Okay, I've got a couple of things I want to talk about, and that is the ground storage tank temperature study that we did, an issue with Lakeview Elementary, and the effluent cells to the golf course. Those are items G, H, and I. So before I go there, I'm just kind of leaving it open if any of you have any questions about anything else on the general manager's report.
I don't believe so, Jennifer.
Okay. All right, then let me kind of start with the ground storage tank temperature study. The contractor came out and they dropped the temperature probes into the ground storage tank and left them in there for, what was it, 4 weeks?
It might have been close to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Look at
4
the
to
date.
6 weeks. It's been a while. And what we found is that there is no real variation of the temperature all throughout the tank, which means it's very good news that we don't need the PAX mixers over in the ground storage tanks. So that was really good news. And we think it's a lot to do with the fact that they fill from the top. That kind of keeps it stirred up, and so the temperature stays good. So that was something you all had asked when we were talking about doing the PAX mixers and the elevated. Do we need them in the ground storage? So I'm really glad we took the time. The cost was zero to do that little study, and we've saved us some money by knowing what
Yeah,
that we don't
close.
need them. So that's wonderful. Lakeview Elementary School. Whenever we do a rate change, I drive the finance and utility budget group insane in that I want every type of account tested very carefully, because I've seen it too many times that you think you put all the rate codes in correctly and the bills go out and you find out that they didn't work exactly right. Well, the good news is that didn't happen in our case. They tested them all very well. But as there was one problem they found when they were doing the testing, and that was with Lakeview Elementary. And it really had nothing whatsoever to do with us changing the rates this time. But what happened, it appears that some years ago, we can actually go in and see if there was a physical person that made a change to an account, and that doesn't appear to be the case. So we think it was maybe during a software upgrade in like 2007 that it changed something of the way that the accounts were set up. And what it was there was an irrigation account that was actually a deduct from the master meter. In other words, we billed them for the master meter, and what went through the irrigation was supposed to be deducted. Correct? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when that upgrade happened, it turned that off, and it made that account into a billable account. So basically, well, more than basically, they were actually getting double billed for the same water since 2007 through the master account and the other account. As it turns out, it was the facilities manager's first or second day here in town as the new facilities manager. So I feel that he's probably going to get a very good raise, since he got to go tell his boss on the first day that he's getting a $25,000 refund. Because that's what it turned out to be. And it was one of those calls that when you start out by saying, we found an error on your account, they're holding their breath, getting ready to yell at you. But when you say, and it's in your favor, and it's $25,000, they don't get mad at you. They're very happy. So, but I did want to kind of update y'all on that we did find that, and we did send out the refund. And so that's done because it was in their favor. I don't think you'll hear anything from them, but in case you do, now you know the story of what happened with Lakeview Elementary. So we did, that always triggers something else. Of course, the question was, are you absolutely sure that that's the only account that was that way? And we're absolutely sure that it is. So we feel like all the accounts were tested and everything looks good there. The last thing I want to talk about is the effluent sales to the golf course. I think I mentioned this during the budget workshop that it's time to start working on a new contract. And one of the things that we wanted to do was look at what other entities and what they're charging. I'm going to ask you to pass these down.
Sure.
And we are not by any means through with this, but we've started, we've kind of got some other entities. I guess there's maybe 10 or 11 on here. And you can take a look at this and you can see that there's, as I told you in that meeting, there's really no set method right now on how to charge for effluent. So you can see that it goes anywhere from the city of Louisville, that's charging 16 cents per thousand, to Odessa, who's charging $6.33 per thousand, to, there's one that's really incredible. San Antonio charges per 100 gallons, not per thousand. So there is a huge variation. If you tried to put where we are, I don't know, maybe we're in the middle. I see some $1.46s. We charge 70 cents per thousand right now. But I do want to say that there's some differences in some of these that we've talked with. Well, actually, most all of them. The difference that we have is they all actually have to pump out. So in other words, there's like a lift station that they're actually having to pump the effluent out to wherever it's going, whether it's an industry or a golf course or wherever. And we are lucky in that ours is all gravity flow. We don't have those maintenance costs for a lift station. So those are the kinds of questions that we're having to ask as we go through this too, because it makes a big difference. I think that Odessa is charging the petroleum company $6.33 just because they can. I mean, I can't imagine why it would be more than their potable water, but that's what it is. So I wanted to share this with y'all. There's a few entities that are charging like a base fee, a meter base fee, because there are costs associated with replacing those meters. Georgetown is someone I specifically talked with. They're looking at changing very soon to charge a base fee, and they're also looking at going up a little bit on those on the volumetric. Right now they only charge a volumetric, but they do not feel that those entirely cover their costs. We talked a lot about how they set their rates. They consider this a cost of service, but he admitted that there was a group of lobbyists that came to their council meetings that were very against their golf rates going up, and the council kind of backed down a little bit on what they were charging for the effluent. I think we need to kind of look at our situation as a whole, and I see that the effluent purchased by the golf course is hugely beneficial to our residents in that, A, it's a revenue source that we're making, but B, it takes a huge potential potable water demand off of that system and moves it to the effluent. In other words, if they're taking 750,000 gallons a day, that's going to be moved to the potable side if we weren't selling the effluent. So the demand is going to be larger, which would mean more quickly we would need more water from Fort Worth. We would need more storage tanks. Those things add up. So we have to look at the big picture is what I'm getting at. And it was very eye-opening to me to talk to those that I did talk to about how they set the rate. So I think right now we're probably at a pretty good place on where our rates need to be, and I think we should all kind of pat ourselves on the back that we are where we are. And I think every entity is a little bit surprised. They should be asking us our advice because we've been doing this so much longer than all the other people. We're the ones that they should be looking at for advice on how to do effluent. So I wanted to share this with you right now. As we get more, I'll send it out to y'all and let you kind of continue to see what other entities are charging. And then we're going to need to, sometime once we get through all this budgeting, probably get a group of us together to start talking and formulating the contract that we want to move forward with the golf course. So is there any questions about the effluent?
And a question I just thought was interesting, scanning this thing, out of 18 entities, only 3, actually only 2, are charging less money than we are. We're really on the cheap end.
Yeah.
And if you take Kerrville, it varies from 30 to 70, so you could potentially say that it's 3. But
Terry, on Kerrville, I wanted to ask you this question. What did they say? Is it by whoever they have the contract with?
Yes.
Okay. So they vary it by whoever they have the contract with.
But Jennifer,
Okay.
the other thing that hit me is of the 15 that are more than we are, it's like 2 to 5 times more than we are.
Yeah, a lot more than we are, exactly.
Some of that has to do with geographics too. I mean, where they are. San Antonio's having, the Edwards Aquifer is their primary source. And when you start talking Odessa,
Yeah,
they're
San
hun-
Antonio
they're- Yeah,
has-
they're hunting for water. What is the, when does the current effluent contract expire?
I believe it's April,
So we have some time.
so we got some time, yeah.
Yeah, San Antonio has that purple pipe. You know,
Okay, if
all
there
that
are
reuse.
no
Yeah,
further
it's
questions, let's
huge
go to the
infrastructure.
Fire Department report. Chief Thomas.
Thank you, President Moss. You have my report in front of you. July was a pretty calm month, not a lot of major activity. We had 33 EMS calls and 30 fire calls. Most of the fire calls were routine in service as far as good intent or no major fires. We gave one mutual aid to Westlake, one EMS and one fire to Roanoke, and received one EMS from Roanoke. 4th of July was a good event. We had good turnout. Everybody had a good time. Didn't give any tickets for fireworks. So, any questions on my report?
Questions?
It's not on the report that you just gave, but I forgot to bring up on this chart here, the overtime hours, is that just our half of it, or is it the whole amount?
That's the
town?
whole amount.
So it's the whole amount,
That's
so
the
that
whole amount.
number would change,
That's
okay.
what they accrue through the year.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Chief Thomas?
Danny, I'm sorry I didn't pick up on this, a long time ago, just out of curiosity. Your EMS charts in March went off the chart. What happened in that month to cause so many EMS runs?
In what month, I'm sorry?
March?
We had,
Looking at your chart table, your 4-year comparison, year-to-date number of calls, and EMS in March is just way the heck up there. I'm just curious.
Are you talking about total calls or EMS calls?
EMS calls. The rest of them are kind of, if you see the bar graph, the rest of them are kind of in sync, but EMS just is almost 120 calls. Whereas it normally runs about 80 or 85 or so.
In March, I'm showing 31 calls of EMS.
It's service calls that month that
Yeah,
went
it's a
up.
and I asked when you,
Service calls,
I asked and you said you were focusing more on education or
yeah,
something like that.
education and that's when we start our annual inspection, so the service calls went up in that month.
Right.
Help me, Danny. The graph, you've got blue, red, yellow, and purple. And the blue is EMS. And the blue is sitting up right at almost
The blue
100.
indicates the year.
Pardon?
The blue you talking about the graph on the first page?
Yeah.
Here, the blue indicates the year. It's a 4-year comparison.
Yeah, but I'm looking at March of 2014, which is in blue.
Yeah, he's just saying that month in
That month.
2014.
That's
That month
that's
was
the total
115
number of calls.
And in that 115 calls was all the
50,
calls,
yeah, go ahead, Danny, sorry.
was calls for service as far as our inspections and our public education stuff.
So that's what causes the spike up?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I was asking.
It's more calls for services than anything.
All right.
The average on the fire calls was, EMS was 31, and the month before that was 31, so we were right on peak with
Gotcha.
the fire and EMS
Yeah.
calls.
I have one more thing, it's just point of clarification on, I read some emails about, the gates in Hogan's Glen and stuff, and I just want to make everyone clear that the fire chief is not a traffic controller. He's not there to open gates. His main concern is to save a house or to save a life or whatever. I think, as long as you just communicate with the police and say, hey, we're going to have a lot of apparatus, but it is not your responsibility to make sure a gate opens or closes, to reroute traffic. It is your responsibility to make sure that gate opens and closes when you try to get in the community. So I just want to make that clear that you're not a traffic cop, you're a fire chief. Okay?
Any other questions or comments?
There was two more things on my committee report.
Okay, go ahead.
The customer complaint dated August 3rd. From that customer complaint, we did change a policy for our fire and
Oh.
EMS equipment, so that's been handled.
That's
You
a
did what,
ta-
Danny?
Taco change. That's a taco change.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now
sorry.
we go to the Marriott and eat, so, I mean, you know.
Oh.
Kevin, you're laughing, he's not, so.
I'm just, that's what it was
I
tied
know,
to.
I know, but
I think we handled that. I pushed that off to Jennifer and Mike both, and we made an agreement of policy change, so. The update on the fire truck committee, we're meeting again on Thursday. I'm meeting with Mr. Toomey again tomorrow on some stuff. We're working on the FRP to get it out to the vendors for bid, so it's still in progress right now.
So we are meeting Thursday?
Sir?
yes.
I wasn't really sure if it was
Ma'am?
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday now.
Thursday.
It's kind of been all
The
3 days.
committee's meeting Thursday. We
Thursday.
kind of left Neil out of the mix because he's financing,
Right,
he was
'cause
out
he's
of town
leaving,
stuff.
so.
But we are going to, I am going to meet with Neil tomorrow, and we're going to go over some things on the
I'm gonna arm wrestle Donnie.
arm wrestle Donnie and myself. And, yeah, left arm.
It's all right.
Okay, any other questions? If not, let's move on. We will now convene into a closed session. The board will conduct a closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code anointed Chapter 551, Subchapter D for the following. Pam, would you help us?
You bet. Pursuant to section 551.074A1, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline or dismissal of a public officer or employee, the annual evaluation of the general manager. Section 551.0712, consultation with attorney. Consultation with attorney on a matter in which the
Did you
duty
mark
of the
them this
attorney to
time?
the governmental body under disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflict with the Open Meetings Act, and to seek advice of counsel on legal matters involving pending or contemplated litigation, settlement offers, or legal matters not related directly to litigation or settlement, in section 551.074, personnel matters. A, pending litigation in cause number D1GN 14001983 in the District Court of Travis County for expedited declaratory judgment relating to issuance of bonds by district to finance wastewater treatment plant improvements. B, pending litigation in cause number 1403540158 in the District Court of Denton County relating to access to the 3.996 acres of land purchased by the district from BDMR Development LLC in January 2013. C, waterline relocation agreement with McGuire Partners Solana Land LP.
Thank you, Pam. We will now convene into a closed session. The time is 8:42. We'll take a 5-minute break,
Yay.
directors.
Thank you, thank you.
Now reconvene back into our regular session. The time is 9:23. Item 13, consider and take appropriate action regarding closed session items. Do we have any motion?
I'd like to make a motion regarding the pending litigation cause number 14-03540-158 in the District Court in Denton County. I'd like to have the board authorize the MUD General Manager to discuss resolution with BDMR developers regarding the lots by the wastewater treatment plant.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Development, isn't it? Or is it developers?
I'll check with
It is development.
development.
So correction,
Okay.
I approve.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Any other action need to be required pending our closed session? If there is not any, do we have items for future agenda that anybody wants to bring up?
Did we talk about one in the meeting? I can't remember what it was, but we can say
How
pretty.
to set agendas for future
Yeah,
agendas.
So
yeah,
that's October.
Okay.
that's a future agenda.
If you think of something for the future agenda, please contact our general manager. Item 15, set the next meeting date. It is September the 16th. Is there any problems with that?
That's the regular, but we did want to talk about a special meeting.
Okay.
And I wanted to see if Lori can remind me what date you wanted me to see if we could do this. On the 28th?
Yeah, that's what sorry to hear that, but we'll keep you
They're
advised.
meeting the 26th, the town.
You're going on vacation that
That's the
doesn't.
27th to get all the
information, we could do the meeting on the 28th.
28th.
Yeah, let's
But
just
you-
do it. Were you gonna
that's-
be able to post?
Yeah.
I'll be in
Okay.
on the 23rd.
On August 28th, would you all like to try to meet that day in the morning?
What day of the week is that?
That's a Thursday.
Thursdays, Kevin and I both have early commitments.
Well, you know, you have a higher commitment.
We can do it in the afternoon or something.
I do afternoon, it's just the morning's a problem.
Well, we don't have to be morning, I don't think.
Well, yeah, y'all tell me what time would work. There is a meeting in here at 6 that evening.
I don't think it's gonna.
No, we could do
So-
like maybe 2, Jim?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Jennifer, 2 o'clock, sounds
That's
good?
Perfect.
What day is that?
It's Thursday,
The 28th.
August 28th at 2 PM. And we will send you all a email tomorrow just to remind you to put it on your calendar.
Okay, and our next meeting date is still September 16th,
Yes.
okay? All right, if there isn't any other business, the meeting will be adjourned.
At what time, sir? At what time?
Oh, I'm sorry, 9:26.